Live?
There we are. We are live, Uncle Tony's Garage.
That's me.
Welcome to DragBoss Garage Live, Monday night.
It is an awesome pleasure being here. Thanks for having me.
The pleasure is mine. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and your busy YouTube channel to give me some of your time. I appreciate that.
No, it's the exact opposite. I enjoy meeting new people. You know, I've gotten to know my viewers, and I want to get to know your viewers. And you know, this is the first time we've ever talked, you and I.
I've been on your live webs and gave you some money for coffee and stuff. I think that's an awesome thing to do, you know, help out the guys. And I followed your builds and some of your stuff, and it's interesting how you're like a no frills type guy, you know. I mean, you say it the way it is, and you come up with an idea for a video, boom, you're ready to rock and roll, baby. I like that.
Well, we have a lot of stuff going on, so there's always, it's like an endless pool of material. There's always something that needs my attention. Okay. Something's leaking, something needs to be upgraded, something's broken, whatever. It's all fuel for videos.
There's a lot of people here. You might know. Let's see. Here we got.
Now I can't see any of the. Wait, let me see here. Okay, there we go. All right, now I can see them too. It's John Wilburn, Big Wilbur. What's happening, Big Wilbur?
Now, John's the reason that you and I are talking actually this quick.
Okay.
Yeah, he kind of played the middleman and actually helped us out. And there you go. Thank you, John.
Hi, this is Don and Wendy English. I'm sure you know a lot of these folks from my lives.
I do. I recognize a lot of the names. You know, there's a lot of banter that goes on your live cast, and it's like it's actually two shows in one. What you're saying, and then these other people are kind of carrying on their own conversation.
Yep. And sometimes I'll start following their conversation, and I get lost on what I'm talking about.
Let's see. Here we have Tony Lehman. Thank you.
What's happening, Tony? Home from Watkins Glen, 445. Have you seen their setup?
No.
They have a 60. It's a 61 value, 60. It doesn't matter. It's got a big block in it.
Yep.
Dual quad intake manifold. Okay, and they've got an AFB in the front, and they've got a one barrel in the back, like off of a slant six.
Okay.
So they drive off the one barrel, and they have the four barrel for, you know, doing their thing
when you need it.
It's pretty crazy.
That's ingenuity right there.
Is Andy Unity Motorsports Garage?
John, I take an aspirin every day, baby aspirin.
You take a baby aspirin?
He said, how do you not look at your orange room and without having a stroke? I say,
this is the new podcast room.
I like it.
So we've got a studio. Okay, so like this is the first time this week we'll be doing everything from the shop for the first time. So this is like the podcast, you know, room. Then we've got the studio for the AHR Drag Racing History channel. That's two doors down over here. John Wilburn and I, we're going to start doing a podcast, I believe later on this week. We're going to kick it off, called Uncle Tony and Big Wilbur in the morning, where we're going to be talking about other YouTube channels, you know, the content, car stuff that, you know, because who can watch it all, right?
Oh, yeah.
We'll watch some of it for you.
John's going to do one with me, too. He wants to do one. It's going to be so great. So much information out there to share.
He's all over the place. He's just all over the place. Have you had Andy on from Unity Motorsports?
You know what? I'll tell you. Him and I were going to hook up, and then some issues came up, and we never got a chance to meet. I was having a lot of internet issues. For me, like you, I mean, it took me 3 months to get internet out here to my garage with different Wi-Fi extenders and all this baloney. I don't know that stuff, but I had to read about it, and I figured it out. So it took me a while to get that. And then to do live stream was even more time because I'm good at computers, but not tech savvy where I can pick these programs up and work them like that. So now that we're all back in the game and I'm here, he's going to be the next one. somewhere along
I am completely helpless when it comes to any of this stuff. Right? I mean, Kathy does all of it.
Okay.
100% of it. I just sit back and just I look at the camera. I go blah, 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 and she does everything else. So I couldn't tell you how I even got here right now.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Here's what this says.
Oh, then she says, "Hey Tony, look at the camera, not the computer, or move the camera to the computer." No. It's good. It's good. Here, I'm looking at the computer.
I see you fine. I
Okay.
can't tell if I kind of look at you down here, but the camera's like right above you, so you probably can't really tell. What's up, Andy? Good to see you here. Appreciate you showing up. You're up next.
Ronnie Kirkpatrick says this is being picked up on Mars.
Nice.
I wonder what the traction situation is like on Mars.
Well, it's probably slippery. It's so cold there.
Yeah, and the air has got to be thin.
Where's Mars hot? Let's see.
You got to jet way back to run on Mars.
Here's one.
Okay, John, what's Tony's thoughts on a 351 Cleveland? I've said it before that of all of your small block motors, that's it. That's the king. There's just no comparison to any other engine. You know, it has big block cylinder heads. It's a small block with big block cylinder heads.
Yeah.
We beat that, right? Inch per inch, pound per pound. Bob Glidden was the one. He said inch per inch, pound per pound, the 351 has more horsepower producing potential than any other small block, and he was absolutely right. You can't argue with that.
I believe it. I've been racing them for 40 years. The same car, the same engine, 40 years. So I got to agree with him.
See, I personally prefer the little Windsors. I like the 302s. I ran one I had the IHRA Pure stock record back in 1987 with a 5-liter. And but that's my personal preference. That doesn't mean that it's the best thing out there. It just means I have a warm, fuzzy spot for those engines.
Sure, I understand.
But the Cleveland for sure is the one, obviously.
Thank you, Andy.
And 3-piece and 351.
Yeah, I see that. I'll tell you, my experience with Mopar, what I have is there was a guy that had a Hemi Roadrunner down the street. So that was in 72 or 3. So it was probably that model year with a 4-speed. I remember it. Actually, it was a Super B. I'm wrong because I took the emblem off, the little bumblebee. I remember I broke it off.
You checked his emblem.
Yeah, I did. And I'm sorry, Hot Rod Todd, if you remember that was me. So I apologize. I still got it, I think. But so that
he's probably dead by now. You think about it, he'd be like in his 80s, and no doubt he went to his deathbed cursing you. The guy who got my emblem.
But I did have a Duster with a slant 6 and a 3 on the tree, shifter on the floor. Man, that was the best car. It only ran on 5 cylinders. And I drove that thing for 2 years on 5 cylinders. It would stop at idle, shake like this. But it was a 3-speed. The guy I got it from bought it brand new, kept every gallon of gas record on the car from 72 when I got it somewhere in the 80s somewhere. Wrote down every gallon of gas ever put in the car. Huge log. It's crazy. Prices, where it was, how much. Great car.
The Slant 6 with the 3-speed is like one of my favorite all-around driving combinations. You know, people, gotta have horsepower, it's gotta have this. No, if you just want a happy driver, just something, because that's the thing about high-performance cars, street cars, they're only high performance like 1% at a time. And the rest of the time you gotta deal with it,
Sure.
For my money, a driver, the perfect driver, is around town driver. It's not really an interstate bandit, but any combination with that Slant 6 and the 3-speed is just a pleasure. It's just a happy, they purr. As you go down the street, they purr, right? They're easy to love. They're very lovable. And that's, to me, I look for that more than any other quality in a car, because I'm old now.
Yeah.
So I want lovable. I used to want terrifying. Now I want lovable.
I'm getting to the lovable part. I still like the terrifying a little bit. There's a lot of people here that I see on my channel and yours. It's awesome,
There you go.
Dr. Romex, thank you. You're right.
That's good. I like that. You know something? There's your shirt. You talk about merch.
Oh,
There's
yeah.
your shirt.
Excellent.
I'll buy one of those.
All right. All right. Nice. I like that.
You know what my biggest selling shirt is?
No.
The John Dodge quote one. Did you ever see that one?
I have to see it. No, not off the top of my head, I can't remember what it looks like.
I'm going to piss off you and all your Ford guys if I show you that. It's a quote from John Dodge, one of the Dodge brothers.
Yeah, sure.
And it says, someday people... Hang on a second.
Yeah. I'll talk to these guys. Yeah, I've never had a 383 or a 440, Ronnie. I would like to see what they run like. There you go. Thanks, Anthony. I don't know. It depends on really the cam, Big Worm, if what the idle's going to be like, the characteristics of the car. The single plane is going to probably be more dramatic than the dual plane.
I'm sold out of them.
Oh, are you really?
We have the merch room on the other side. I'm sold out of them. But I have the screen to make more. It says, someday people who own a Ford are going to want an automobile. By John Dodge. We sell out of those every time we make a bunch. We make couple hundred shirts. They're gone.
Didn't they work for Ford at one time?
Yeah, they actually made the chassis.
Yeah. Okay.
And then they had a dispute.
Sure.
Then they started their own company, and they used the Pentastar, the Chrysler Star.
Yep.
Originally, I guess you could tell the story. It's like well known. There was the really bad blood between the Dodge brothers and Ford. Okay, right. So when they started, Ford was a very well-known anti-Semite. Right. Yep. He actually wrote a book called The International Jew. There was a bunch of things. Right.
I've heard that. Yeah.
So to stick it to Ford, to Henry Ford, the Dodge brothers used the Star.
Okay.
And that's how the Pentastar came to be the symbol on the Chrysler products. It's not the actual Star of David, but it's an interpretation of it, and it was to stick it to Henry Ford.
I never knew that. Never knew that at all. Yeah. What's up, Chris? Good to see you. I'm working on a video for you.
What are you working on?
He's got what is a 65 Falcon, or Fairlane, I mean, 64.
Okay.
And it runs a Cleveland. I want to say I forgot the cubic inch, 410, I think. And he sprays it with nitrous, and he just made it into the 8s.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. So he's spraying it heavy. And the Clevelands are not a very strong block integrally. Their structure's poor. They had casting core shift issues. It's kind of a luck of a draw what you get. It's the heads that make the motor. We know that. That's where the power comes from.
Do they split like the Windsor blocks?
They do at certain places, like number 5 and 1. They have their little areas.
Okay, but they don't actually do the thing like the.
Oh, they will. You put enough power to them, or you got an imbalance situation. You're running RPM that's not balanced, reciprocating assembly. You'll break stuff.
Detonation cycles.
You build it right with good parts. Those things. I mean, I ran them shifting at 7,500, go through the traps at 8,200, $8,000 for 5 years. So they will run if you build them right. Let's see who else we got here. Now these guys are some like Mopar dude. Thanks,
Mopar.
man. Mopar man, 78.
Yeah, he's one of ours.
Yep, thank you. It's hard to keep up with everybody. Greg, I see him. Good evening to you, Greg.
How you doing, Greg?
So maybe his block has sleeves in it. This is that guy that's running that Cleveland that's running in the 8s. So he may have sleeved all 8 cylinders.
Really?
It's possible. They have done it. They used to furnace braze them back in the day.
Okay.
Bob Clinton back in the day. Bill Kuhn in Michigan is the guy that actually did it.
And that doesn't affect the deck rigidity at all?
With what now?
Sleeving all these holes like that.
You know what? I've only heard bad things about it. That trying to do that, it weakens the block too much and they just don't hold up or they leak water. I've heard that. But then I've heard other people that said they've done it and have good success.
I would think it would take a lot of the rigidity out of the deck.
Oh, of course, it does. You know?
Yeah.
So what they did was they furnace brazed. They would take the sleeves and furnace braze them all in at the same time.
Okay.
That way, one with the deck and the whole water jacket at once.
Okay.
That's what they did, so they could go a Cleveland 4080 or 4 1/4 over. Then they would have to remachine all the surfaces, but you would have a 125 bore.
Also, when Warren Johnson was doing the Oldsmobiles,
Yep.
they used to hollow out the block, then set sleeves in there, and then weld the sleeve top and bottom to the block. And that's how they were back in that era, the 1978, 1979.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what they were doing with those. Literally gutting the block and then reworking it with welding rod and sleeves.
It's amazing the amount of time they would go in for that, you know?
It really was. That was the glory days of Pro Stock. That's where Pro Stock was actually interesting. You know, from a technical standpoint, like if you were a gearhead, right?
Yeah.
You really get some, like Pro Stock hasn't been that way in generations. Like nobody alive today really can understand what Pro Stock was like in that era, like the 1970 to like 1980, let's just say, when they were running all different combinations. Yeah. People can't understand how technically intricate and interesting and the innovation and the lengths that people would go to, you know, to actually, like the AMC guys, like Masking Encounters.
Sure. Transect the head.
Yeah, exactly. They gut the head and re-weld everything back in. The work, the level of these, and you know, complimentary guys, but the same way. Sure. They are to some extent still today, you know, but back then, Comp and Pro Stock had a lot in common, you know, in that like that over the top innovation, you know, win at any cost, no effort spared, and that's missing from it today. That's totally missing from it.
The grassroots, man. That's what we need to bring it back as, and that's what I'm trying to do is bring back some Pro Stock stuff that no one's seen these engines in 50 years run. There's a couple guys I know that run this kind of stuff, but you don't see it where you can go on YouTube and say, look, this is the old Cleveland. Look at this stuff. This is how it ran. Let's see what it can do. I want to bring that back. So,
well, isn't there a Nostalgia Pro Stock Association?
There is. There's actually that Ronnie Kirkpatrick who saw there. He has the Nostalgia Pro Stock Association. And then there's another one, Midwest Pro Stock Association. And that's Mike Ruth. He has a Bob Glidden Fairmont that he runs. They go to the different races and do some shows for that. So,
what era, like how do you, what's the definition of Nostalgia Pro Stock as far as like?
You know, I look at it like this. To me, Pro Stock is actually, you could say, three kind of classes. 70 to 74 was the big block era with the Cammers and the Hemis. And that's where Chrysler put in and was backing Don Carlton with the Mopar missile. I got a whole episode I'm doing on that. I hope Joe Pappas said he wants to come on and be on here, and we're going to talk. So he was on the crew for the Mopar missile. Mm-hmm. So that era. And then came the weight break where they said, listen, we're done with that. We're going to make it cubic inch, you know, weight per cubic inch. And that's where they went with the small block era. From
it was still weight per cubic inch from 70 to, but beginning in 73.
Yep.
That's when they started letting the compacts in.
Okay.
That was like the Jenkins Vega was the first of those.
Yep. That was 72. I remember he won in 72.
Yeah. Okay. Was it 72 or was it 73?
No, he won in 72 because Bob Glidden was the runner-up, and that's how Glidden started racing. So,
but that was the beginning of kind of the end of Pro Stock. Is basically Pro Stock to that point was Super Stock. It was heads up Super Stock.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
The Jenkins car. Who else was right in there? I think Paul Blevins had one like right away.
Sure.
That was a hitter. And then that was it.
You know, you had Roush,
Yep.
Earl Wade, Jack Roush, Earl Wade. Who else did you have? You had a bunch of guys in there, man. Dino Don was in there.
Well, I see that's when they started. Like, okay, you look at that middle '70s era, right? That's when things really started to get weird because you had the compacts, but then you had weight breaks. Excuse me. You had weight breaks given to long wheelbase cars. So you had Nicholson running the '70 Mustang.
Yep.
You had Gap and Roush with the taxi, the Tijuana taxi.
Sure.
You know, because and that made Pro Stock really interesting. You know, again, like to me, Pro Stock. The spirit of Pro Stock is a heads-up super stock deal. But when you get to that middle '70s era, when you had the long wheels and the short wheelbase and this weight break and that weight break, it was a political nightmare for the guys racing it. But if you were following this stuff, it was neat, you know, because here comes the Hemi Colt, versus the four-door,
Tijuana taxi or something. Yeah, it
was neat stuff.
And that's the other break I put it down is kind of like there. From that area on, like 72 to 81, the small block era, the mid 70s is kind of where I'm focusing at because that's, like I said, I was 10 years old then, and that's when I got introduced with, Bob Glidden and Highport Cleveland's, and I saw this stuff and wondered about it. And that's been burning in my brain for 40, 50 years, and now I want to at least get it out while I have 14 good years left in me. So, and then I go to the big block, from 82 on is when the big block stuff, they had AR stuff and a whole different aspect of it, but
yeah, my head. I enjoyed Pro Stock, but my head was really in the nitro cars at that point.
Okay.
And when I actually got involved in the middle '80s and into the '90s, that was what I was looking for. I was looking for that middle '70s era in the fuel, But by that point, by the time I was deep into it, it had changed so much. Everything was gone. All the fun was gone. But that golden age of drag racing, man, 65 to 75, right?
Yeah.
That 10-year period where it was just everywhere you look, every aspect of the sport was just magic. And then it all went away.
Computers. Let's see. Who can we see? There's so many people that I just can't keep up with everybody here. Let's see. While we're on this topic. 72 Jenkins car was back half only. My Duster is a full chassis car, 73. So he has a 73 Petty Duster.
Right, but what he's bringing up, that's a good point.
Yep.
At first, those cars were only back half. That's all they allowed.
Okay.
And then 73, they allowed full chassis.
Yeah, there's so many things to keep up with reading there. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. And I'm just kind of bringing back stuff that I remember as a kid that I enjoy, and I know other people are into it. Guys that are on your channel, anything to do with hot rods and high performance and carburetors and race fuel, we all love that. I love the smell of race fuel. I wish they made air freshener like that, as another merchandise idea.
Yeah, on my channel, I try to stay a little. I try to keep things biased more towards the beginner, the low buck guy, the guy working out of his house. This is all kind of foreign to him. You know what I'm saying? And so I try to. Every once in a while, we'll throw some of the more exotic stuff in.
Okay.
But for the most part, we try to stick with like the really basic. Because that's you have to listen to the audience. So what is your audience telling you that they want? And my audience is saying, I want to learn about how to make a car go fast. How to make a car live, how to drive a vintage car today. I have a lot of people who really don't care about drag racing.
Right. Yeah.
We don't spend very much time on the racing oriented stuff, and we try to gear more towards guys just trying to get by with today's gasoline and how do you do it? How do you tune up an old car? So it's like I got to straddle both sides of the fence. One side of me wants to crack open a hydrometer, dial some mag in, and then the other side of me is like, no, just show them how to take a steering wheel off.
Right? No, I can see that. Sometimes you got to look to see who's out there. I mean, I'm looking at this little camera, and it's going out to millions and millions of people, and every person out there has different capabilities. I don't know their mechanical level. So sometimes I try not to overtalk or say things that they might not understand. You got to break it down. But it's so funny. because like I'm geared more toward drag racing of a Cleveland or any drag race aspect. You know, how to make that car run with what fuel pump you need to make the fuel pressure you need, what carburetor you need for what CFM is going to tell and dictate what cam you need. You know what I mean? I'm kind of liking that aspect. That's why it's interlocking, it's interlinking, it's cool.
Some of the best feedback we've ever gotten, and most views we've ever gotten, were on those theory pieces, like on exhaust scavenging with headers and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, camshaft basic. You know, how many people? I mean, seriously, you take if you look at the sum total of people in the car hobby, right? Everybody knows. 99% of them know what a camshaft is, but only 10% of them actually understand what lift, duration, lobe separation angle, advancing, retarding. There's only a very small percentage that know that. And so with our channel, what we try to do is we try to take those concepts and break them down so that the beginner can understand them. So that they're not, when they're at a race or they're at Cars and Coffee or whatever, they're at the machine shop, wherever it happens to be, when these topics come up and people are mentioning, you know, lobe separation angle, LS, they have an idea what's going on. And when it comes time to pick their own cam, they can, does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Our channel is basically more dedicated towards helping those guys, the average person, the 90%, understand those more intricate, complicated concepts.
I get a lot of questions from guys that have let's say a 450 horsepower Cleveland or 500, and I'm running 750, maybe 8. So there's a big difference on those two motors. But they're asking me questions about what they have for their combination. And you're exactly right. You're not going to put a 270 at 050 cam in a street car, you know what I mean, with 350 gears. You know what I'm saying? You know, it just doesn't make sense. And that's a great point. Directing these guys so that they can not waste their money on parts that aren't going to make them go fast.
Right. You know? Well, I go out of my way. That's the other philosophy with our channel. Work with what you have. Right?
Exactly.
Don't worry about going out and buying. And our that's basically the theme of our projects. It's like work with what you have. Work through the bugs. You're going to find problems. Things aren't going to work. Don't give up. Keep plugging away. Keep trying this and trying that, but don't spend money unless you absolutely have to. You know?
I know. And I say
and then move up.
Afford the best parts you can. Buy the best parts you can afford. You know? Buy it once, buy something good if you're going to buy something good.
The 75% of the population out there can't afford any parts. You know, and that's the thing. And I felt the same way when I was doing magazines back in the 80s. Yeah, I felt the same thing. The magazines were all geared towards the top 25% of the population that could just crack open a catalog, order a cam, order a set of heads, get whatever intake manifold, whatever carburetor. They just buy the stuff. It's not a big deal. They're going to drop $8,000 or $10,000. Fine, you know, they'll make that back right away.
Sure.
That's top 25%. The other 75% of the automotive population, the vast majority, can only buy those parts secondhand.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? They have to lounge. They have to, you know, they've got a family, they've got kids, they got mortgage, they work a regular job. They've only got, at the end of a month, they've got an extra $200 that they can throw at their project. Well, we're dedicated to trying to show them how to get the most out of that $200.
I've been buying parts probably for close to 40 years, buying used parts and selling them to people, you know, making money on it, using them. I use whatever. It doesn't have to be brand new. I've used a ton of parts that are used. They work just fine. You know, put them in the right situation. Hey, here's somebody you might know.
Uh-oh, not Dallas.
That's Dallas, right? Yep. Hey, Dallas.
You're not mad at me, bro, are you? I zapped him yesterday. Yes, this was the funniest thing, man. You had to be there, right? He's got a customer he built this Buick 300 for, right? It's really old school. It's got Mondello heads on it. I mean, real Mondello heads, right?
Sure, yeah, Joe.
So yesterday he calls me up and he says, I'm going to fire up this Buick. I don't know anything about this Magneto. Can you come and take a look at it for me? Tell me if it's any good, right? It's just sure, I'll be right there. So I grab Kathy, we run over to his house, and before she even gets the camera out or anything, he's standing in front of the garage and he's holding the mag like this. Okay, he's got the wires just draping all over him. So I walked over to him and I went like that. He got mad at me for a second. He looked at me like, "What did you do that for?" It says, "Now you know what's good."
There you are. Little cardio version for like, you know.
You had to be there.
Magneto, yeah.
Magneto.
That's Adam from Down Under. Thank you, Adam. Let's see what he's got to say.
Okay. The Buick V6 Stage 2 owned Busch Grand National Series GM shut down Buick Motorsports because of it. Okay, I believe that. They took the design and used it as the LS. He's right about that. There's a lot of LS that has its roots in the Buick motor. A lot of people don't, you look at the architecture of the LS head, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There's Buick there. That should have been a Buick and not a Chevrolet.
Now I heard the same thing about it being a part Cleveland. The Cleveland has a lot of influence on it. I don't know. So much stuff out there now. But speaking of Buick V6, so this dude I know offered me a Fairmont. Long story short, is he lives in the town where Buddy Ingersoll's V6 Regal was. It's still sitting there under wraps. It's been there for 30 years.
That car, okay, 1988, 1987, 1988.
Yeah, yeah.
At the time, I was crewing on like 2 or 3 different fuel funny cars, so I was always at an IHRA national event. And no matter what I was doing, as soon as I knew that car was, I'd be watching it or listening. As soon as I heard, like Brett Kepner was the announcer, and as soon as I heard Buddy Ingersoll, I'd drop whatever I was doing and run right to the starting line, because that was the most impressive car I have ever seen. And I've seen, you name it, man, I have seen it go down the track, slamming Sammy Miller right on down the line. But that Buick, that V6, was the most impressive car I've ever seen. It did things to slicks I've never seen before. If you actually got to watch that car up close, let's say from ground level,
yeah,
okay, it did things to the tires. It's hard to explain. You know how you'll see like okay, wrinkle wall slip, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
So you'll see it set, and then it pretty much stays in that basic.
Right, rides itself, yeah.
Not Ingersoll's car. Ingersoll's tires used to wave. There was a wave of, I can't even describe it because there's nothing else to compare it to or create a visual. But that car, like 5 feet off the line, like just about the time it was about at the tree, would start to do this thing to the tire where it had a wrinkle all the way around, and it waved. That V6 applied power in a way that no other engine in that class did. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I saw him race Glidden yesterday on, Diamond P Sports,
Okay.
1986. He ran like a 730 or something like that, 731.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy that car.
He was in the running back then. The big thing was who was going to be the first door slammer over 200.
Yeah.
And it was Ricky Smith was actually the favored guy, right? It was Ricky Smith, Bob Glidden, and Buddy Ingersoll. But it ended up being a pro mod car. It was Bill Coleman ran a 202 at Darlington. But that race to 200 for the door slammer was just an amazing time. And they all did. All of those cars back then were. It was before really the science got to where they tamed them down. They were wild animals. They did a lot of crazy shit. They were fun to watch.
Here's one for you.
Okay. What type of horsepower limit can the Dodge 440 block handle? It depends on how well you stay out of detonation. See, if you stay out, and when I say detonation, I don't mean spark knock that you can hear, okay? Detonation meaning excessively sharp combustion pulses, or basically noise, a bad harmonic that sets up through the block. If you can keep the thing out of detonation, or in other words, make horsepower with it fat, so it has a soft peak, a soft pressure peak instead of a sharp pressure peak, there's almost no limit to what you can get out of one of those blocks. 2,000 horsepower is nothing, okay? People did it back in the day. If you look at the early Hemi, the
Sure.
street Hemis that they were running in Top Fuel and Funny Car up until 1974, 1975, they were 440s. There's no difference in the other than those cross bolts, which do absolutely nothing in terms of like supporting that soft section of the block or the weak section of the block between the cam and the crank. The cross bolts do nothing for that. So essentially, those engines, they were able to get 2,500, 2,000, 2,500 horsepower of them because they blew a lot of fuel through them and they had a soft pressure pulse. By the same token, if you run one lean and mean, you're lucky if you get 600 horsepower out of it before it starts to split the mains. So it's the horsepower, the upper horsepower limit of any cast iron block is really dictated by the way the pressure wave is. Does that make any sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Sure.
Sure.
Run them fat, you get stupid, crazy horsepower out of them. Run them lean, lean and mean, right? That's it. And
right.
It creates a harmonic, a noise inside the motor, and that noise is what breaks things.
Now, I didn't know this.
That's the truth.
Yep.
That was the truth. At that time, it was the only combination you could buy. Right? You go to Buick dealer, get yourself a V6 Regal, or a Grand National or a T-Type.
Like 78. What was 81? I remember turbos in 78 on a Buick.
Yeah, 78
out there. 79 was a T-Type Regal, and then 80s was wasn't it the GNX or GSX?
They had the Grand National and the T-Type.
Yeah.
I was the first person to put a production Buick turbo car in the 13s. I worked for Cars Illustrated magazine. I ran a 1385 with a T-Type.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's right. That was the only combination in pro stock that you could actually go to the dealer and buy.
Well, if I go pick up this Fairmont, if this all works out the way it's supposed to be, he knows of people. Buddy's been dead for a long time, but the car sits in the garage with a cover on it, and they said I could probably come over and get some pictures of it and do an episode on it. So
I would love to see that car. That thing brings back a lot of memories. Looking back, like I said, man, I'm in a drag. I'm almost 60 now. Drag racing was my life for many years, and that car stands out in my mind as like one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen. And Ingersoll, that wasn't his only claim to fame. If you go back to the late 70s, Ingersoll was running doubly modified compact with a turbocharged Pinto. And he was down in. Have you ever seen that?
Never knew that.
Yeah, he owned the doubly modified car. It was a class that NHRA was pushing back in the later 70s, modified compact, and they had all different gradations of it. But he ran doubly modified with a 122 cubic inch Pinto, single turbocharger, and he was down in the single digits with it.
Man, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, Ingersoll was a brilliant guy.
This is Adrian from New Zealand.
What's my favorite engine?
Hey, Adrian.
Probably the Slant 6. But you ask me that question tomorrow if I'm working on something else, but that'll be my favorite engine. I love all engines. You put me near a hit and miss motor, and that's my favorite engine. You know what I'm saying? I love them all. I'm just an engine person.
Hit and miss. To hear that thing run, it's just amazing. I could hear it run for 20 minutes.
Right? It's not a thing.
Crazy.
I love that.
And that's what I say to people. It's not about, I had bleed forward blue blood and Mopar's the only engine, and I don't go for any of that. I like it all. Anything with an engine, I don't care if it's a lawnmower or a mini bike. I grew up with all that stuff. That mechanical thing is what makes me who I am, as a mechanic, and I love the mechanics of anything. Lawnmower, four-wheeler, all that stuff.
Right. See, like I'm a Mopar guy, but I'm not a Mopar guy because I love Mopars per se.
Yeah.
I love them because of the design language of that particular era.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It has nothing to do whether it's a Dodge or a Plymouth or I have this loyalty to this corporation. That's not what it is. It's just that Chrysler employed a collective of engineers from the period of time from the late 1950s, the middle 1950s, until the late 1960s, into the 1970s, and they spoke a common language, a common design language that worked together. And that's what I identify with. And people right away think, oh, it's the glory stuff. It's Hemis and it's whatnot.
Yeah.
No, it's the way that they captured the washers on the bolts. It's the material. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay. It's the machining. It's the layout. It's the philosophy of the design philosophy of Mopars of that specific era that I identify with. People are like, well, what about the new Mopars? Well, the new Mopars are no more Mopar to me than a Subaru is. It's in fact, to me, the Subaru is more Mopar than today's Mopars. So it's not. I don't have a blind brand allegiance. I have a deep respect and love for the engineering that was put into those cars in that particular period of time, and that's what makes me a Mopar guy.
Well said. Well said. Let's see, here's one that's kind of interesting for us.
Okay, Tim, there were rumors people here in Australia are talking about that they are not manufacturing flat top and cam cores in the USA at the moment. I don't know about that. I know lifters, there's a big question about lifters, but I couldn't tell you about cam cores.
Now, I've heard
I'm having this problem with lifters right now. I got a bottle rocket is a hydraulic roller.
Yeah.
They wanted to go with a hydraulic roller because remember, super budget. Okay.
Right.
So
right.
the idea was to try to keep the stock valve train, the stock rockers, keep as much of that as stock as possible. So I went with a hydraulic roller, which was a mistake. I should have gone with a solid roller. I don't like the concept of hydraulic roller, but I figured, for the sake of the beginner, not going to have to lash rockers and stuff like that. Not going to have to spring for a set of $500 rockers. The cost difference between a hydraulic roller and a solid roller is nothing. So that's why I went with the hydraulic roller. And from the beginning, I found that the lifters were a little soft. I didn't like the way they were bleeding down, but I was okay. We'll run the car. When it's running, the oil pressure's up. It's fine. It sings, not a problem. I have one lifter in there now. I have a few of them that bleed down almost immediately, and we showed that on a video. And I have one that has just gotten to the point it's just given up completely, and it bottoms out. So you can't. In fact, the other night, Saturday night, we wanted to, because we got rained out the night before, and I didn't have any new parts to fix. I just, well, let's just try it. Let's just go see what happens. So the car sounded good here in the shop. I said, all right, fine. Drove it up on a trailer, got to the track this last Saturday night, and it was just dead. Same thing. That one lifter collapsed and it was running on 7 cylinders.
Dang.
So, and then you had the same exact thing if you watched the last episode of Roadkill. They had exactly the same thing happen with their Disgusting car, where it's brand new, fresh motor. They got a 408 in it, right? Hydraulic roller. And as they drive in the car, it's got a lifter noise. It comes and goes, comes and goes, comes and goes. And then finally they go out and they get on the thing a little bit, and it collapsed the lifter. And actually, I think it kicked the lifter out of the bore and killed the motor.
Wow.
No, it's bad, man. It's bad.
I've heard a lot of the lifter cores themselves, the lifter bodies, the material they're made out of are not very good quality steel right now. And there's a lot of soft lifter issues. So
that's another thing entirely.
Yep.
That's another thing entirely. I'm talking about just sloppy hydraulics in the road. No, but what you're saying is exactly right. Now, what I found was on a batch of lifters, this is going back now, I had a batch of lifters that one of them or two of them had gone flat on a cam. And when I checked for crown on them, there was no crown.
Okay.
The lifters were just, and you could actually see the crosshatch, the finishing crosshatch. The lifter is supposed to be polished and ground,
right?
Okay, with a curve to it. Okay. So it doesn't sit flat on the lobe. That curve allows it to spin. Well, these lifters, you could look and there were clean cross, like machine marks on them. There was no crown, so there was no way for them to spin.
Okay.
So that's one of the things. You got bad metal and you got bad machining on the regular flat tappets that are out there. I feel bad for anybody who's messing around with these things today because you take. I was just talking about this the other day. It's like I feel for a guy who spends a couple of years planning a build. They buy what they think is good parts. They take their time. They're very careful. They're meticulous. They do everything. They fire this thing up, and like in 10 minutes, it's got a flat load, and now their motor is filled with right.
Yeah.
What do you tell people? What do you do?
Go solid roller. I hate to say that, but that's what I've said.
No,
you know?
but you're right. That's what it's come down to. Solid roller is really the only viable option. It's the only safe option these days.
Here's one for you. I've heard of them.
Talk about mushroom lifters.
Yeah.
It was more Chevy with the GM with the mushroom lifter. They were looking to get a larger contact area on the Chevy lifter is a smaller diameter than the Chrysler lifter.
Okay.
The Chrysler actually has an advantage in the diameter. The mushroom lifters were done. That was a Chevrolet thing, and I believe that was like a NASCAR deal for a short period of time. That was big at just about the time that gas porting was new, right?
Yep.
71, 72, 73, sure. Like that.
Here's a little thing of what you were saying. They forgot the 40 degree radius, I guess, on the lifters when they finish them.
Yeah. I don't know what the actual degree is. All I know is when you put a lifter on a flat surface, you should be able to rock it. And you couldn't. There was no rocking these things. And like I said, when you look at them, you look at a properly finished lifter. It's ground polished on the part that contacts the camshaft with a radius, a curve, and these didn't have it.
Here's one for us. I'm in Ohio. Where are you, Uncle Tony?
I'm in Tennessee.
Okay.
Nashville, Tennessee, the center of the universe.
Sandusky, Ohio, roller coaster capital of the world.
There you go. Who else was there? Was somebody from Sandusky? Tony Nancy was from Sandusky, right?
John Kazi, or no, he was from up the street though. John Kazi was from near here.
Okay.
Avon, Ohio. Yeah, here's John. He's got the answer here.
Yeah, Chevy had the mushroom lifters just to get one more. Yeah, exactly.
Let's see where we are here.
420 and Eliminator is saying Ford Y blocks use mushroom lifters.
Okay.
Not stock. I mean, I've worked on Y blocks. I don't recall mushroom. I don't recall having to drop the lifter from underneath.
I like this one here. Tommy Boy. Yeah, they filmed Tommy Boy here in Sandusky, Ohio.
Yeah, Tony Nancy was, I believe, originally from.
Okay.
Sandusky.
Yep, I remember.
He's a great racer. And a upholsterer, for that matter.
And I look at this, and there's like 116 people watching us right now. I mean, to me, that's stellar. It amazes me that people want to come in here and listen to us bench race and talk back and forth.
Sometimes they have good conversations on their own. I know when I'm doing a live, I'll start following the conversation that they're having. I'm not part of it, so I don't jump in there. But yeah, sometimes you'll have some good conversations happening in the comments.
Here's one for you I can comment on.
Okay.
So I'll give you the idea about what I know about the 904 lifter, because that's Chrysler's size, right? 904 diameter, Cleveland's 875. So once you get into the high horsepower, once you're making it 750, 800 horsepower, then you got to start to get to that. You're going to need a big cam. Those heads need to be flowing 400 CFM to get up in that 800 horsepower range. So to carry that flow to the cylinders, you need a big cam that's going to open up in the 850 range. You're going to have a lot of lift on that cam. So in order to support the valve train, to support that cam lift and the spring pressure that you need to control that cam, you got to have a bigger diameter lifter. That's why they came up with the 904, the 937 keyway stuff, to support those spring pressures that you need for those heads to flow for their peak. So I am putting in a 90 set of 904 lifters, or bushings at least. They're going to be on a Cleveland. So yeah, you can do it.
So I just saw something. Let me see.
Yep.
I don't know if I can. I can scroll back. Somebody said about NASCAR Hemis.
Oh yeah, I think that was Ronnie.
All NASCAR guys ran them in Hemis. Every NASCAR
Right
engine I have has them. The only NASCAR Hemi I've ever seen that had a mushroom style lifter was a D5. Actually, it was a D5 block with D4 heads. I had a Mullins, a complete D5 assembly,
Okay.
and that had standard lifters in it. It's not that they weren't used by Chryslers, but they weren't common in Chryslers. I don't know how many NASCAR Hemis you've got, but most of the ones that I've ever, and most of the NASCAR stuff I've come across has been standard diameter lifter. And it was the Chevys that was the more common for the mushroom lifter. But I mean, those guys were trying everything back then. They were all over the map. Every couple of races, there'd be a different innovation. You know, they were always trying different stuff.
I gotta put this one up.
Legends? I'm hardly a legend.
Me either. I'm just a guy in his garage who likes to work on cars and engines and stuff.
That's me, man. I'm just a grease monkey from Tennessee.
You know.
I was from New York City, but I mean, I'm in Tennessee now.
I can tell by your accent. What are you, Long Island?
Staten Island.
Staten. Okay.
Staten Island. I've been to Tennessee now for 18 going on 19 years. So you all.
Yep, I hear it.
See, right? I could pull off Southern.
I grew up in Syracuse, New York area, upstate New York. Syracuse, Oswego, those areas.
Mm-hmm.
Tony, talk. This is something for you. Let's see.
Talk more about Bob Mullen heads. You mean the D5s? I had a set. I had a whole D5 motor. This is going back. Yeah, that's about the middle '90s. I bought a stack of a bunch of Hemi stuff, and there was a disassembled D5 in the bunch. I didn't get an intake manifold because he's a special intake manifold.
Like this.
Yeah, that's a standard 426. The D5 has a round intake port.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, that's the square. That's the regular street Hemi port that you have there.
Yep.
But as far as the Mullen stuff, the D5 and all, the problem with those engines is that they require a special block, the D5 block, which is actually known as the Chrysler fuel block. They cast them in 1874 and 1875. A lot of people think, oh, they stopped casting street Hemis in 71 or 426 Hemis in 71. Yeah. They actually cast a bunch of them in 74 and 75. And they were known as the fuel block, high nickel casting. It had the same thicker main, an even thicker main saddle than the 70 and the 71 street Hemi casting.
Okay.
It was known as the fuel block, but it was actually contoured for the D5 heads because the D5 head uses a relocated exhaust valve, and the rocker, the push rod has to lean way over, so you can't bolt D5 heads onto a street Hemi block. The push rod actually ends up in a water jacket, the exhaust push rod. So to run any of that Mullen stuff is like it's like a full commitment for not really a bunch of benefit.
Okay. I love all these questions. Now, this is what I remember, the old purple shaft. I don't know anything about it, but back when I was getting into this, W2 heads were like the big deal back then. They were just coming out in the 80s. I think there has to be about maybe, I want to say 79, maybe 80.
Well, the W2 was a part of the evolutionary, so you had the TA head.
Yeah.
346 pack. Okay,
340 stuff, yeah.
Right. So the W2 was an evolutionary step from that. There was a popular head. That was the head to use in those pro stock days when they were running the 340, 350, 360 cubic inches like that.
Yeah.
That was like the meat of the W2 era. But they take specialized valve train. There's a lot of stuff. Like those Mullen heads, you can't just take a set of W2s and drop them on a 340 and go make smoke. There's a bunch of stuff that goes with it. Different intake manifolds, different rockers, different push rods, different rocker stands. There's a whole, and honestly, they're not worth it. You could, not for anything that guys like us are going to get involved with.
Okay. Let's see. Hi, Rusty.
Okay, Rusty says, I have a friend with an original lightweight Belvedere with a 426 Hemi. There was no primer from the factory. Can you talk about the early program and what they did to win on Sunday? An original lightweight Belvedere with no primer? No, those cars were primed. Actually, a lot of them were shipped in primer, just primer. There was no sound deadener or anything like that. They skipped the part of the unibody assembly where they would add the sound deadener and seam sealer and all of these other things to it, right? But other than that, they were just standard. Those 65. There's nothing where they left primer off the car to save weight.
Okay. What's this?
You love New York accents
and attitudes.
And where are you from, Dean?
He's from down under, Australia.
Oh, okay. We have a lot of viewers from down under, man. Australia and New Zealand. We're going to do a live where we turn the camera upside down soon and just do one specifically for them, where we can talk about how we never got any Australian 265 Hemis, the Hemi 6s here.
Okay. That'd be funny. Yeah, I have a lot. The Cleveland's big in Australia. They only made it 70 to 74 here in the U.S. And then the tooling went down under to Australia, where they started using that block, the Cleveland, up until the 80s. So Australia's big into Cleveland's, way longer than we have been. So I get a lot of my subscribers from down under that are racing into the Cleveland stuff.
They're hardcore down there, man. They're really hardcore, and they love their Hemi 6. We can't do a live without at least one or two guys getting on there. What about the Hemi 6? What about the Hemi 6? And we never got any of them here. So there's like absolutely no knowledge, no reference, no nothing to those engines in our culture.
Okay.
Somebody was just asking about the Michael Thompson. I don't know. Can I highlight these things? Yeah, I can highlight them too. Oh, look at that.
Here, wait. I did it. Go ahead and try it, Tony. I did that.
Oh, did you?
I could read your mind.
No, I can't. Okay, you can do that.
But yeah.
Okay. Can you explain why you're not a fan when I'm not fond of a 427 cigar cam? This is an ironic question to come up because Tommy Bird, the Hot Rod Hoarder, did a video just the other day on Jim Barollaro's collection. Jim passed about 4 or 5 years ago. So Jim has Chrisman's Comet. He's got Nicholson's flip top car. Okay, and just an amazing collection of stuff. So he and I, going back about a dozen years ago, 12, 13 years ago or so, he wanted to do a nostalgia top fuel car. So he said, he reached out to me, do you want to get involved with it? And I was like, yeah, sure, let's talk about this. And I said, I know nothing of the camera. I built a couple of FEs in my life. I'm not really fond of them because I see a lot of deficiencies, but we'll check it out. So I spent a good 6 months completely immersed in camera land. So far immersed in camera land that I actually set out to find the remains of Pete Robinson's motor, the car he got killed with. And was that?
Sneaky Pete.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually set out to find the remains of the car that he got killed in because I heard it had been buried on a property, his old property in Atlanta.
Wow.
And I was actually going to go find this thing and dig it up just so that I could have the actual gear drive, my hands on the gear drive so we could duplicate it for Jim's engine. That's how far into camera land I went. Wow. Okay. So what I came away with after this 6 month thing, and then the project, the idea of the project ended when Jim had a stroke. So it slowed him way down. He had the car. I mean, this was moving along. He had aluminum blocks cast. The car was on the jig. He built a beautiful slingshot drag. I mean, beautiful, right?
Wow.
So it was the project was really moving along. He had a stroke that slowed everything down, and at that point, I had to get involved in other things because I couldn't wait for him to, you know what I mean? It was one of those deals.
Yeah.
But during that time that I spent immersed in camera land, the things that I came away with was this: the motor itself is from a functional standpoint, and from a functional standpoint, from a design standpoint, the camera motor is an exact cross between the early Chrysler and the late Chrysler. And when I say exact cross, I mean everything is right exactly in the middle, from the bore size to the size of the combustion chamber. It's exactly a split between the early and the late Chrysler. That's not to say it's a bad thing, right?
Right.
But it still has the basic FE issues, even with an aluminum block, right? So the ceiling is a bitch. Forget about trying to do anything with the actual, to make any serious horsepower with an actual FE. The main saddles aren't there. Even a side oiler doesn't. Even the side oiler still has oiling deficiencies. And the part with the camshaft is a complete and utter waste of time. I think that's my biggest gripe with that engine. Like I said, from a making horsepower standpoint, from a combustion chamber standpoint, from a geometry standpoint,
sure,
yeah, it'll do anything a Chrysler will do. There's no question about it. But the basic bottom end of the engine, the bottom end of the engine isn't up to it, and the cam drive, the whole pointless, absolutely pointless. I imagine it's good for a steady state RPM thing. So let's say you're going to run something where constant 7,000 RPM. Let's say, because originally they designed the engine for NASCAR. So
right,
if you're going to run the thing at 7,000 RPM for 3 hours, 4 hours straight, yeah, I imagine it might be an advantage to that, to the overhead cams. But from a drag racing perspective, it's a total loser. It works opposite of what you want. A drag engine, especially a blown nitro motor, accelerates from idle from 2,000 RPM to 7,500 RPM almost instantaneously. There's so much stretch, there's so much slack, there's so much give within that whole, within the timing chain setup, that the weird, crazy things happen. There's so much whip that goes back and forth. And that's why I felt that we really needed, if we were going to do this camera thing, we really needed to get our hands on an actual gear drive rather than try to design one from scratch. Pete Robinson already did it. It was a proven thing. He made it work. And that's why I went to the lengths that I did to try and actually find the wreckage and dig it up, so we had a blueprint to go off of. But that's my gripe with the 427 camera. It's a pointless engine. It's not for us. If you're a drag racer, it's not for us.
It's Ford's 90-day wonder to come up against the Hemi. You know, it's what they had to do for NASCAR to try to compete with the Hemi. You know,
in its element as a NASCAR engine, it would have been very good. You know what I'm saying? It
sure
would work. But for drag racing, it's a mess. It's a mess.
I passed on one. I should have bought it for, it was only $10,000. It was sitting in a grocery cart.
Really?
Complete 2 tunnel rams from Carb Japan. It was Dino Don Nicholson's prototype intake, is what the owner said.
Okay.
I believed him. They had 2 Hemis, 426 Hemis on the factory crate. They went for $400 each. My buddy bought a side oiler Ford, $600. I got a 40 Ford Coupe, $1,800.
Nice.
This camera was $10,000. My buddy bought it, anesthesiologist. He's got it. It's in his basement, sitting there apart. I don't know what he's going to do with it, but hey, thanks, Andy. I got to give him a shout out because he wants to get on us. We got to all get together somehow and do a little bit of a talk, you know?
Good.
Keeping up with it here. Let's see.
Chuck Seiler Chuck Seiler was running a shotgun motor, not a camera.
Okay.
There was a guy named the last person I know who actually, well, you got the guy Tommy, what the hell was his name? And Tommy Grove was messing around with
Tommy Grove, yep.
For a while, but his stuff was always on fire. We match raced him a couple of times. I was running with a bunch of cars in the Chicago area at the time, like Mike Faser's Chicago Fire and Brett Walker's Time Machine, and yeah, Tommy Grove stuff. Man, I got to watch it run a couple of times in person, and it was just always on fire, or there was something always just falling off it. There was a guy named Ken Winward that ran one in an alcohol dragster, blown alcohol dragster, in around I want to say like the 1995 era or thereabouts. Okay. And he had that thing running good. That was a solid running motor. It was just maybe, let's say, a tenth off the hitter cars. You know, so I mean, and you're doing an unorthodox combination, only being a tenth off the hitters. You know, yeah, you're not going to go rounds with it, but you know, you're in the running. So you know, you got a lot of respect for him. Chuck Seiler was running a shotgun motor in Top Fuel. But his thing was always head gaskets, man. Every time I ever saw that car run, it was pushing out head gaskets, doing all kinds of nasty stuff like that.
I want to give a little shout out to Daniel Wilson, Uncle Tony. Now, I've known him for a long time, and he's been following me along. And the other night, he offered me an 87 Turbo Coupe, T-Bird Turbo Coupe to build for a drag car like Glidden used to have.
Oh, nice.
He won it as a giveaway car. It was a pace car for the Atlanta Raceway, the 500, Atlanta 500 back in '87. He won it in a contest. So I'm thinking about using that as a project.
That would be very cool.
His brother was Gene Wilson, who used to build all the camera stuff and the FE stuff for Phil Bonner back in the day. And he's just saying that he also knew Pete, you know, Sneaky Pete Robinson.
You're a very lucky man to have known Pete Robinson. He was just a brilliant, out of the box thinker. You know, he's the Pete Robinson mentality. See, like I've picked up through my life, there have been people who I've studied, right?
Yeah.
You know, because I see what they did, you know, and I identify with the things they did. And Pete Robinson is one of those people, you know. So anytime I work on something, right, a project, whether it's one of my own or somebody else's, there's always these voices that are in my head. There's always these people that are guiding me, and Pete Robinson is one of them, okay? And Pete Robinson was such a weight fanatic, and that's why I get my thing about weight. Now, Pete Robinson's quote was, take something off your car, throw it in the air, and if it comes back down, it's too heavy. So, and that is always in my head. Anytime I touch anything on a car, you know what I mean? I'll look at a bolt and I'll say, would Pete Robinson use this bolt? You know, it's thicker than it has to be. It's longer than it has to be. You know what I mean? And so I'll discard it and I'll go and I'll get something else. And I've been fanatical about that my whole life. But Pete Robinson is one of those voices that's always in my head, always looking over my shoulder and saying, don't do that.
I always say every ounce counts.
Yep. There's nothing lighter than a hole.
When I was racing my car, when I do race it, I've weighed every damn thing I take off it and write it down. Headlight rings with bolts and screws, you know, 2.46 pounds. You know, 10 pounds of undercoating I scraped off. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Let's see here.
You met John Force at Rockingham back in the mid-'90s. What a duster the following week, and we've more power ever since. The last race we ran with a funny car, I was with Bobby Logano at the Twilight Zone. We later became partners on a Top Fuel car. But the last race we ran as a funny car was the '91 Mopar Parts Nationals in Englishtown, and we had a ramp truck. Right, you have to picture this now, right? You know, we got this ramp truck. Right now, there was a little bit of a relationship. We had Austin Coyle, who's married to Bobby Logana's niece, Lisa. Okay, so Austin would bring us milk crates full of like old pistons and rods and rings and bearings, and that's what we ran the car off of. It was all John Force hand-me-down stuff.
Wow.
the last race we ran with the funny car, we were pitted next to Force, and we had this ramp truck, and it's me and Bobby and his kids, Bobby Jr. and Dominic, right, and his wife Marie, and we got our camp set up, and we're parked in between. John Force there with 3 tractor trailers.
Oh,
He
yeah.
had 2 stackers with loaded with cars, just loaded with cars, and then he had another 18-wheeler there that was his quote technology center, and the whole thing from front to back was computers and benches and like there's people like he had 22 people on the payroll at this race. Okay, just think about that. Okay, and here we are with this ramp truck, and he qualified 1, we qualified 16th, and we burned the car to the ground first round on live TV against Force.
Wow.
From that point, we went to the top fueler.
Here's a good little fact.
Man, I can't believe that Hemi 426 is ran on nitro and making 2,000 horsepower in a day. Think about actually they made more than that. I mean, you talk about the Iron 426 Hemi topped out at about 2,500 horsepower, and from that point it was all aluminum motors from there on.
So when those funny cars are running all the big blown Hemi, let's say 75, 78, Gene Snow and all those cars,
right?
They're making 2,500 horse.
Yeah, the number was 2,500 horse.
Yep.
Okay. You from up until around 1970, 71, they started overdriving pumps.
Yep.
Go with bigger mags.
Sure.
And the horsepower jumped from 1,800 to 2,000 to about 2,500, and it stayed in the 2,500 horsepower range until around 1985. And that's when Dale Armstrong started throwing fuel at the motor. And here's okay. So I don't want to steal your show, but this is cool stuff, right? So here's what happened. Okay, Kenny Bernstein was a funny car racer in 1969, 1968, 1969. He ran the engine master Cougar, the Howard Cougar. He had his own car. But he bounced from car to car. He was semi-successful, okay? 1969, 1970 were thereabouts. He quits. He goes into the restaurant business. Decides around 1980, 1981, he wants to get back into drag racing. So he, Chelsea King, it was his restaurant chain, okay? So he uses resources and he puts together an Arrow funny car. He can't find the other end of the track to save his life. So he ends up hiring Dale Armstrong. Dale Armstrong is a just super genius, okay? Mm-hmm. Dale Armstrong becomes buddies with Ray Alley, or Ray Alley used to be Bernstein's partner, the engine master's car.
Okay. Alley
develops the race pack computer at the same time that Armstrong gets hired by Bernstein. So what was happening was they'd run the car and they couldn't get consistent data out of it because Bernstein was on and off the throttle. He was a very erratic driver. So what happened was Armstrong started throwing more fuel at the car, fattening the car up, fattening it up. And every time he fattened it up, it softened the car, and Bernstein was able to drive the car.
Okay.
So that's when they added the second mag. They had started throwing so much fuel in there, they added the second pump, and then they had to add a second mag to keep it lit. And from that point, that was the evolution where it went from about 2,500 horsepower to around 6,000 horsepower. And that was all in that period between, and that's when I started to get involved in it, heavily involved in it. In fact, I worked for Jerry Caminito in 1986, and we actually had the very first car, the first commercial race pack computer was on. He used our car as a test bed. Okay. That was at the Gator Nationals in 1986. We actually got hit by a tornado at that race, which I could tell you a story about that sometime. But anyway, at that point, it went from about 2,500 horsepower to around 6,000 horsepower. And then the evolution from that point, it brought us to today when you got 10,000 horsepower, 12,000 horsepower. And really, that was about the mags. That was about the clutch management systems and just because how they use a 44 amp mag. I don't know if you realize how much a 44 amp mag is. Like a 5 amp mag will light your ass up.
Oh, yeah.
A 44 amp mag will kill you outright, right? And they want to pair these things to keep them. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on.
No, I'm just listening to it. You know, like what kind of spark lead are they having for timing on them with 2 mags going? Where are they setting the timing to get that to fire?
Well, back when I got started, it was what they called the Star Wars tune-up. Okay, it was all violence. It was all lean and mean and extremely violent.
Yeah.
And we were running 68 degrees of lead with a single mag.
Okay.
When we went to the dual mags, we had to dial it back to 55 degrees to make the same exact power as you did at 68 with the single. Because the flame front is being started in 2 areas. You know, it's got a 4 1/4 and 4 to spread across. So instead of in one place, you got 2 kernels going, and it takes that much less time. So it worked out to be, what, 12 degrees. My math is terrible. 12 or 13 degrees difference between the single and the double mag.
Let's see, here's another. Ooh, this one's good.
Okay, wasn't it in the mid to late 70s that aluminum Hemi blocks, Ed Ping 392? He's like, it wasn't Ed, no, it was Donovan, Ed Donovan, 1972.
Oh, yeah, Donovan.
Well, all right, but the first aluminum Hemi block was actually Mylodon, built the Mylodon 7-liter. That was in 1972, early 1972. Right after that, Ed Donovan cast the first 392 block. And the thing that those 2 engines had in common was that they both had removable main saddle. Okay, so instead of the main caps being screwed into the block, the main caps were incorporated into a saddle, a whole saddle assembly that you had to drop out. So the problem with those blocks, the Mylodon and the Donovan, was that in order to do any service on the mains, you had to literally take the entire bottom half of the block off. You couldn't just pop a main cap or 2 off.
Got it.
Keith Black, at that same time, did it with the 426 Hemi, but instead of having like the Mylodon with the split girdle, Keith Black just recast the 426 Hemi in aluminum, added a rib or 2 here or there across the valley, and that revolutionized everything because those guys, if you hurt, let's say you got an hour and a half between rounds, if you hurt a Donovan or you hurt a Mylodon, you were done, man. You know, you couldn't just swap a couple of bearings out. Right. If you were running a KB motor, it was nothing. It was no big deal. You drop 4, drop 3, whatever it happens to be, and bang, you're right back out in the lanes. So that was the difference there.
Here's one for you.
Sure. Did I ever see any Rodex? Personally, I cannot remember ever actually seeing one. No, I'm lying. I saw who the hell was running one in Pomona in Pomona '87. There was somebody who was actually in the running with a Rodex, and that was the same year. That was the same race that the Gail Banks had this car called the Duroliner, which was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. This was a top fuel car that had 4 small turbochargers on it. This thing was violent beyond any comprehension. I watched this car in awe. Okay, he leaves the starting line. Okay, tree comes down. Right, he mats it. Car goes about 3 feet, and it just stops. It goes silent. Okay, and it tore the block, the back of the block, the motor plate, the coupler, and the front of the rear end, the 9-inch Ford, just took that whole section of driveline and spit it out in one chunk.
Wow.
It was just amazing. Amazing.
I don't know much about this. The Can-Am 494 stuff. Magnesium blocks, I think they had, or something.
The Can-Am 494 too. Yeah, I'm not familiar. I'm not familiar with the 494. Ed Pink was he still is. He's 90. He's like 90 years old now. Ed Pink was a brilliant engine builder and a bit of a tuner, but he wasn't in the design end of things really the way KB was and Ed Donovan and all. Pink basically worked with what was available, and
they made a Can-Am 494 engine. I want to say they were made out of magnesium, but I don't remember what the block material. But it was for that Can-Am series. that the what's the Chevy, the Chaparral, those cars, whatever series is that, Ford had a
that was Can-Am, but for sure, there's no way a magnesium block would live in nitro.
Yeah, it might not. I don't know what it was, aluminum then, but it was just Ford was going in that direction. They kind of pulled the plug and it never went anywhere.
But he's right. There was a magnesium big block Ford.
Maybe that's what it was. It might have been the Can-Am. It's been too long. I don't remember all that.
No, he's right about that. But there's just magnesium. If you've ever worked with magnesium, it's brittle, and there's no way it would have worked in a blown nitro application.
Okay. Yeah, they were saying it was based off a 429 block
with 18 head bolts. Aluminum pieces there. I gotta dig out some old magazines because I remember not too long ago thumbing through one of the old ones and seeing something on that project on that.
You know what, Tony? It's like, what do we do with these magazines? I mean, I must have bins, probably 15 bins of all hot rods, Carcraft, Super Ford from like the 80s on up. It's like, what do we do with them?
I have no use for anything from the 80s on up. I was in the magazine business in the 80s, and I have zero regard for anything that I did or anything that we did in that era. For me, the golden age of magazines ended in like 1974. That was at the end of it, 1973. And Carcraft and Superstock and Drag Illustrated, mostly Carcraft, man. If you could find issues, people who are trying to learn about stuff, how things work, right, from a performance standpoint, hardcore performance standpoint, Carcraft magazine from that era, it used to be called Drag Racing's Complete Magazine. Carcraft magazine from 1966 until about 1973. You'll find the most amazing stuff. There were people experimenting with things in that era that are just really starting to come into their own today. And you get a real good grasp of all of this stuff from those particular magazines. They were fantastic.
I love to buy that stuff on eBay if I see it, old Carcraft magazines or whatever. Let's see.
Hey, Tony, you mentioned Bernstein and AA Dale Armstrong. Remember the difference in John Force and Harry Roscoe? Yeah, of course. We raced it. Listen, when I first got started as a helper, as a mechanic, with the fuel cars, it was the middle 1980s, and it was before Force. He was just running his own car. He had the Wendy's sponsorship for a little while there with that Corvette, and he was a leaker, man. He was in the same league that we were, But he put it together. The guy's a brilliant businessman, and Austin Coyle is what can you say about Austin Coyle? Austin Coyle made John Force, but that's not taking anything away from John Force because he did everything he could with no money, with no budget. The same way the rest of us were doing it, right? But he's a smart enough businessman, and he's smart enough to shut up and listen when somebody's got the right thing to tell him. Especially in drag racing. Drag racing is such an egocentric business. Indeed. When you get somebody who actually knows when to shut up and just do what you're told, okay? That is brilliance in drag racing. That is pure brilliance. And so you got to give John Force all the credit in the world because that's his golden thing. He's smart enough to know when to let somebody else take control. And that was.
But he always didn't shut up, that's for sure. Old John Force.
no, he wouldn't shut up. He'd yap on with interviews and stuff like that. But when Coyle said, this is what we do, that's what you do. And you don't question the master. You just go ahead and do it. And that's how he got to where he is.
And it's funny, if you look back at the history with their partnership, and that one, I think it was Competition Engineering or Competition Engines, some series on here on YouTube. But one day, Austin Coyle said, look, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. And called it quits and walked away.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. People don't understand how stressful fuel racing is. Especially from that standpoint, from the tuner, engineer, designer standpoint. people do not understand how you cannot grasp how much pressure there is, how complicated it is for him to even hang in there for as long as he did. You know, from the Chi-Town Hospital days right up till that's Iron Man. You know what I mean? That's Iron Man. Sitting in the car and steering it down the track is the least of it. It's putting that combination together and tuning and Iron Man contest. And Austin Coyle was a master.
It's just funny, and I guess it's because, like I told you before, when I look at things or I try to put things into perspective, I have to look at years in 10 blocks of 10, years in blocks of 10. 75, I was 10. Now I can move up to, 85, 95. I can put things in perspective at that point in time. And I look at this now and I'm looking back in these old magazines and videos. They're all dying off. Everyone's dying off. There's very few of us alive. I mean, we're already in our 50s to 60s. To keep this alive is what you and I are doing with these channels, bringing it back to the common guy so he can enjoy this stuff that he's never going to probably see again.
The stuff that we're into.
Yeah.
I mean, but this is going to sound bad. This is going to sound really bad.
Yeah.
But in a way, I think that the stuff that we're into should be allowed to die. It should be allowed to pass on, because it clouds the future. We had our time. You know what I'm saying? I had my time.
Yeah.
Right? But for us to keep pushing the old days, okay, from a business standpoint,
yeah.
YouTube is my business, right? From a business standpoint, yeah, there's a lot of fascination with the old cars. People love the old cars. There's a romance about them. There's the technical simplicity. There's so many things to love about them. But the bottom line is that they're not made anymore, and they never will be made again. And it's like we're kind of shortchanging the next generation by always carrying on about how glorious this era was and how great these parts were and how easy it was to do this and these. And I'm as guilty as anybody.
Sure.
But there's always a bit playing in the back of my head that says, eventually, man, if you want to do the right thing, you got to step aside and let the boosted boys come up and do their thing. You know what I'm saying? You got to make room for the next generation. And there are people out there doing stuff that's cool beyond imagination, but it's not our language, so we're divorced from it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I'm stuck, man. I'm stuck in the past. I can't. I'm afraid to let go because I only see this perspective for so long, and I can't let go of it because that's all I know. And not to shut out the new guy, but yeah, I see your point. It's crystal clear. It is funny, It's time to pass the rod, so to speak, somewhere along the line.
Yeah, there are people who love what we did, the culture that we were involved in. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. They always will. But they're not really the people who are out there doing it. They're people who, does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, okay, perfect example, right? Steam locomotives. Okay? I love steam locomotives. There isn't a gearhead alive that doesn't love steam locomotives. Okay? But we have no choice but to look at them as something from the past. Nobody is sitting here saying, well, when is the Union Pacific going to build a new steam locomotive? Well, it ain't going to happen. You know what I'm saying? Because it's part of the past. So it's like, honor the past, right? Explain the past, right? But don't try to promote the past. Let the past slip into the past. And let the guys that are coming up with these 4-cylinders and even electric cars and everything else, now it's their turn. And it's their turn to bring the culture to the next level. You know what I'm saying? And at some point I'm going to unplug from all this stuff, and I'm going to sit back and I'm going to open a dog rescue or something, and I'm going to watch YouTube videos of young guys going really fast with these not-in cars, because that's the way it should be.
So that's the next step in the existence of us. It's dying off. You don't see 50s music out there anymore. You know what I mean?
You don't see any music out there anymore.
But no one's playing it for the most part. So yeah, it is kind of going on the wayside.
But there's so much neat stuff that's happening out there today, man. It's I'm a big fan of it. I'm not in a position to participate in it. I'm kind of locked into the program that I have the same way you're kind of locked into the program that you have.
Yeah.
You know? But there is so much neat shit going on out there, you know.
Like I said, I don't even watch TV. I haven't watched TV in 12 years or really read a newspaper. Don't ask me how I get. My wife tells me everything, and I gotta give a shout out to you. So I love you, Andrea, and my kids. So thanks for helping me do this. But we live in these little closed worlds, you know, and this is the new entertainment with COVID and all that happened. YouTube grew tremendously with COVID because people aren't going out anywhere. They want to see this stuff, you know. So I enjoy that, and it's people that interact with us like here. I kind of neglected the questions, so to speak, because I'm mesmerized by talking to you and listening to what you have to say. So,
yeah, I'm sorry I ran away with stuff, man. I'm in one of them talkative moods tonight. Usually I don't like to talk about this stuff, but for some reason tonight it's like, okay.
It's probably all this stuff back here that smells like horsepower, man.
Probably.
You know, and you brought up a big point, and I don't know if these guys understand this yet, but you being 59, me being 56, I laugh about having 14 good years left because you know what? If you take Bottle Rocket. It ain't no country picnic to go load that car up with all the stuff in the back of the truck and get it all loaded up, drive wherever, unload it all back, do it. It's a lot of work to go racing.
It actually is.
Here you go.
Okay. Don't forget, Tony, all the technology and innovation that was developed back then was developed by grassroots people. Bro, there's grassroots people doing amazing grassroots stuff today. There are guys going, I mean, have you ever seen like Sloppy Mechanics, Matt Apple's page, channel? Right?
Yeah, yeah.
How grassroots can you possibly get? How cool can you possibly get, right? How he doesn't, and see, this is what I'm talking about, right? It's like, okay, so I do videos on stuff that I love, like we did that thing in the old video, and it gets like 30,000 views, 40,000 views, whatever happens to me. I did this Slant 6 video. It's got like 600,000 freaking views, right? But he's doing this amazingly interesting grassroots stuff, and he's lucky if he gets like 3,000 views on a video, 4,000 views on a video. It's time for us to get out of the way and let these guys take over and run with it because they're doing amazingly. They're doing what we did. We just don't recognize it.
Right.
It's the same thing with the racer kids, man. Everybody wants to come down to the racer guys, the Honda guys and everything else. They are doing tremendous shit with these cars. The Boosted Boys, they're in the 7s with a Honda-powered Toyota MR2, right? They're in the 7s.
It's crazy.
These are kids. They're not rich. These are, you know what I mean? They're kids. However old he is, 20. Everybody's a kid to me now because I'm an old man. But this is the stuff that we really all should be getting behind. And does that make any sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense for sure. And I mean, I'm not a Honda guy or one of those, foreign car type things, but I'm the same way. Hey, it's your deal. You build what works for you. I don't care what you run. That's how I look at it. Enjoy what you got. You're getting your hands dirty, and that's what makes a difference. So you run what you brung, and I am impressed. I have a buddy that runs an electric motorcycle, runs like 820s or something,
See, that's the kind of stuff.
Put on it, and it can go in the 6s. I mean, it's insane.
I geek out over stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
I can put it on my channel. It won't go anywhere. You know what I mean? Because my audience just doesn't care about stuff like that.
Yeah.
I geek out over stuff like that. I love stuff like that.
Let's see, what else do we have here? I've lost track of reading everything. But one thing I was saying to somebody I read in here that you roll your own cigarettes. I always get amazed at that. You sit back and roll one up like you've been doing it since you're 10 or something,
Well, since I'm 11. I've been smoking since I'm 11.
11. That's good.
But the reason I'm able to smoke since I'm 11 is because I roll my own. There's no, there's no filter, right?
No
I'm inhaling fiberglass every time you take a drag or
yeah.
That's the shit that kills you. You think about it, right? Indians smoked for thousands of years.
Sure they did.
Never anything that was associated with health problems. Health problems all started when women started smoking and they added the filters to the cigarettes, and then all of a sudden everybody had freaking cancer. So it's like, it depends what you smoke. I'm smoking for, oh God, almost half a century. And like, I don't get winded, you know what I mean? Everyone's like, well, I'll cough to clear my throat, but that's about it. It just depends what you smoke.
Listen, I see people every day in the ER, and it's like I've seen people that smoke. Oh, how long do you smoke? Oh, 5 or 6 years, and they got COPD, bad emphysema. Then you see the guy that comes in. He's 85 years old. He still smokes 2 packs a day. Can barely walk. Comes in for something, and I said, "How do you do it?" He goes, "Smoking never hurt me. I still smoke. I cough a little in the morning, but it doesn't bother me. It doesn't slow me down one bit." It's just funny how it affects different people different ways.
That's the truth. Everybody's different. Everybody's built from different stuff. But it also depends on how active you are. I work 7 days a week. I get up in the morning. I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm at it, right? So my body doesn't have time to get sick.
I have to agree with you. I sleep maybe 6 hours a night. That's it. And I never sit on the couch. This is the longest I've been sitting is right here doing these live chats. I'm always working outside or doing something. But this was good for both of us right here.
Yeah. Ricky T, you're so jealous of us guys. You're in your 30s. I miss basically what I consider to be all the cool stuff. That's why I love sitting here listening. I hate that you feel that way, man.
Yeah.
You did not miss all the cool stuff. Go out and make your own cool stuff, right? I mean, that's what we did. We went out and we made our own cool stuff. Now it's your turn. Stop watching this shit. Stop cluttering your mind with things from the past. Get out there right now. Go get your hands on something and do it.
No better time than the present.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one for you, Tony.
Tony, tell us about the street scene back in the day in New York City. Where did you guys run? What was fast and what cars did they run? Tell us a story of something crazy you witnessed or an infamously fast car. Well, I mean, there's a lot of questions in that one question.
I know.
Where did we run? We ran everywhere. It was just like everywhere. In my day, it was Fountain Avenue for the slower cars, 150th Street and the Conduit for the faster cars. By the time the West Shore Expressway, the service roads on Staten Island, the West Shore Expressway, the actual West Shore Expressway, when you have it, we just ran. You got to remember back in that era, like the late 70s and the early middle 80s, street racing happened 7 nights a week, someplace within the New York City area, right? So you'd run out Deer Park, Long Island one night, and you'd run one car, and you'd run the West Shore Expressway another night with a different car. You go out to Newark, the Global Docks. Excuse me, the Global Docks in Bayonne. Awesome place to go race. We raced literally 7 nights a week. And with our daily drivers, our grocery getters, what happened to be, we would race stoplight to stoplight. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I can't even begin to tell you how much street racing was happening in that area and in that era. What was a fast car? If you were driving a low 13-second car, you were fast. You were fast Fountain Avenue fast. Because remember now, a lot of these places, you have to put everything in perspective now. Traction, there's no traction. So
right.
let's say you're going to run a place like Fountain Avenue, right? Which had a very snotty surface, always slippery, right? You go out there with 800 horsepower. You go out there with a 9-second car. You go out there with 175 horsepower and a 16-second car, and you are going to have a dead nuts race because you know what I mean. It's just you're not hooking. So on the more prepped surfaces, like let's say on the Conduit, it would take a low 11-second, high tech 10-second car to actually be considered, really fast. There were some single-digit cars around, but they weren't common, and there weren't very many places to run those. Most of those races happened at the drag strip. Words would go back and forth, deals would be made, and then they would take it to the track and do it because there really was no place on the street to run something like that. I think I answered all of his questions.
My Cougar, I ran nitrous a couple of times when it first came out in the 80s. I actually got the kit from Mike Thermos. He started at NOS. So back, it's got to be like, it has to be, I was out of school there. So probably somewhere around 83 or 84, I got a power shot kit. It was like 125 horsepower. It was like $600. I worked, I saved for that thing. Oh yeah, I got this nitrous kit. I put it on my Cougar, and I was running 1336 at that time. Man, I put that 125 kit on there. I come out of the hole, sideways running 1187s, man. That thing was a powerhouse, that kit. I had more fun with that nitrous, and then I went up to the 250, got greedy, and I had a lot of issues with it. But what's Bottle Rocket have?
It can run up to a 300 shot right now. It's got a single. It's only got one pump on it, so I can run up to 150. But I haven't sprayed it because I can't get the thing to run consistently as it is. Once I get the car down into the bottom, we're all run 8th mile. We're all running the bottom 8s consistently. And I'll start spraying it. Okay. But right now, it's just a struggle. Every time we take it out, it'll break something else. It doesn't. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're fine.
Working with John. I've got if you minus the cam. If you minus the valve train, we have exactly $12 in the motor. Not $1,200.
Yeah.
$12 in the motor.
Oh
right?
My God.
We've got the transmission was a $75 transmission. Right. So you have to understand the concept of this car. The whole idea of this car is to take the most undesirable stuff.
Sure.
And beat it into submission. It'll either beat us into submission or we'll beat it into submission. But either way, the damn thing is going to run. But it's going to do it with the junk that it was born with. At this point now, it's more of an exercise in oh God, I didn't even know how to phrase it. It's an exercise in the impossible. Honestly, is what it comes down to. But it will run. We're just going to keep chipping away at it. You talk about the nitrous. I told this story on my channel. I think you'll get a kick out of this. Okay, I was about 20 years old, and I had a repair shop. It was a gas station / repair shop on Staten Island, and I had a buddy of mine, Neil Van Opry, and he had a speed shop called RPM. So this is right about I want to say around 1982, 1983. Okay, so he had a speed shop called RPM, and he gets in a nitrous plate, which we had never seen before, right? This was like, we had heard about nitrous oxide, but we had no concept of how any of this stuff worked, okay? He gets a plate and he gets a bottle, and no solenoids. There were no solenoids with it yet. But he had the stuff laying around. And I guess I had a gas station, and one of my customers, we used to call him Fudd, and he had a 70 Riviera, okay, with a 455 motor. I don't know. It might have been a stage 2. I don't know. This thing was brutal fast. So anytime he would take the car and drop it off for anything, whatever happened to him, brake job, oil change, because it was just his regular car, and he was like a 70-year-old guy. Every time he would take the car, we would take the car and go street racing with it. So he'd drop the car off on Friday. I'd fix whatever I needed real quick Friday afternoon. And then Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday, we were out racing this thing. And then Monday morning, I'd hand it back to him, whole still, ready to go. So Neil gets this bottle in, okay? And we're like, well, let's try it. Let's see what it does. We knew nothing, okay? So we bolt the plate under the carburetor. We had no solenoids. We cobbled up some lines. We had some number 4 line and some reducers. And he had the bottle sitting on his lap in the passenger seat. So we go out to Fountain Avenue with this thing, right? We're going to see what this is going to do, right? We were kids, right?
Oh my God.
He's got the bottle in his lap, okay? So the plan was, I'm going to hit the gas. When I hit the gas, you crack the bottle open. So I hit the gas. The car goes, whoa! And he hits this, and it goes, just silence. We just destroyed the motor, broke like every piston in the freaking motor. We towed it back to Staten Island and popped the heads off of it. Everything was busted, and that was my first experience with nitrous oxide.
I got to give a shout out to, this is Teresa Glidden. This is Rusty Glidden's wife.
Hi, Teresa. How are you doing?
Good to see you, Teresa. Tell Rusty we said hi.
What is my favorite class in NHRA? I've completely lost touch with all of the pro classes. I couldn't tell you who's out there or what they run or what they do. And I honestly have no interest in any of it. I have a bug for stock eliminator cars. I've always loved stockers. I've always loved super stockers. I love the lower class stockers. V stock automatic, 273 two-barrel station wagons. I find those things to be ultimately fascinating and entertaining. So if I had to pick an NHRA class, a current NHRA class that I would be interested in following or participating in, I would say stock eliminator.
And then he sends me this because it wasn't him. That's Rusty Glayton.
Oh, hey, Rusty. How are you? I don't know if you remember me, man. I did a story with your old man, drag racing in Drag Racing Illustrated magazine. It was after that boycott. Milan, I believe it was. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But nice seeing you. Hi from all of us too.
Thank you. It's amazing how many people show up here. We had 140 people here listening to us talk about whatever, man, racing and getting into it. So I enjoy that. Here's another guy he's from my Perry Ford.
Stock super stuff. Yeah, man. It's like everything is come and gone under the sun, right? Everything is come and gone, but stock and super stock is just always there, right?
Oh yeah. I'm not sure about this.
How about Junior Fuel in a nostalgia series? To me, Junior Fuel is still, if it's not less than 305 cubic inches injected on nitro in a slingshot, to me it's just not Junior Fuel. Because I look at what those guys were doing. If you look at like if you look at the actual, okay, so for people who don't know, Junior Fuel was a regional thing that was run. It was basically C Fuel dragsters. And it was a circuit that was run primarily on a Lions drag strip in the late 1960s, 1967, 68, 69, may have gone to like 70. But anyway, they were basically C Fuel dragsters, which were less than 305 cubic inches. They had to weigh about 1,000 pounds, so 1,100 pounds. And those guys in those days, right? And you got to picture this, okay? They would take a junkyard, literally, they would take a junkyard 283 Chevy. They'd drop it in a slingshot. They would change the cam. They'd bolt a set of injectors on it, magneto, a set of zoomies, direct drive, and send it and go 200 miles an hour. And they would do it run after run after run. There was I remember reading an article in Drag Racing USA magazine that did like a take apart of one of these cars, and it was the Ige brothers, IGE, Ige, I don't know how you would pronounce it. They were Japanese, and they ran a Junior Fuel car. And I believe the name of the story was How Stock Is My Fueler. And it was literally a bone stock 283 Chevy, and they were talking about how the only real modification they made to the engine was they had to change the oil filter cartridge, because the oil filter cartridges that said AC Delco on them, which was the common replacement, the nitro would wash that off and it would end up in the oil can. So they had to use oil filter cartridges that didn't have any silk screening on them, right? And that was it. Other than that, this was a stock motor. And these things would go 200 miles an hour, right down the line, right? That is Junior Fuel. So it's like anything else, I don't want to hear it. It's not Junior Fuel. It's some sort of aberration.
Perfect. Somebody asked me, and I saw it on here, but it was unfinished project.
Okay.
They asked me, what does DragBoss do? So basically, I got a car that I've been racing for 40 years with the same engine, Cleveland's. I'm into Cleveland's. I'm into pro stock stuff that's coming back. I kind of want to bring it back before I end up dying in another 14 years. So I'm kind of into that scene. High performance racing, Fords, but anything, whether it's a Ford or Mopar, anything. Because a lot of the racing things I talk about, it doesn't matter what make it is. You clean up an oil gallery on a 340 Mopar and clean up the oiling on it, it's going to have a better oiling system than it would if it didn't. So little things like that make a difference. So
not much you could do to improve the oiling system on a small block Mopar, I got to tell you.
are they pretty good? I don't know.
They're excellent.
Are they? Okay.
They're excellent.
Yeah, here's what he says.
When am I going to build a Cleveland? When he invites me over to his place and says, come on, let's build a Cleveland.
Hell yeah. There you go. It'll be epic. Let's see here. I like how people comment about what kind of cigarettes they smoke. Smoke them if you got them, right?
Yeah.
That's what they say.
Okay, John Wilburn's going to he's going to go ahead and put your funeral on the calendar.
Oh, that's it. About 14 good years, I say. Because you know what I told you this before, Tony, and the people that listen. You know, I got this bucket list of engines, about 5 engines I want to build. And once I'm done with that and these car projects, I'm done with all this stuff. I don't want to do it anymore. I just want to drive a cool car around and cruise. That's it. But I got this bucket list, and I started this whole deal, this channel, so I got to finish it.
Right.
So hopefully I can get it done within 14 years. Yeah, I don't want to die in 14. But
I'm going to. YouTube is being really good to us right now, and we're in a growth phase, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm having fun with it. But my longer term plan, because I'm going to be 60. My longer term plan, let's say the 3 to 5 year plan, is to just literally, I want to sell every single thing in my world. I want to get completely away from the stuff. I want to open up a dog rescue, and that's it. That's how I want to spend the rest of my. That's what I'm building towards right now. That's pretty much what I'm building towards.
Here's one here that's interesting, and I got some videos I'm making about Bob Glidden that's going to come out. That's going to be pretty big.
That's right. He used to smoke Kent. Yeah, I forgot about that.
I always wondered what he smoked because you never see him a lot in the public smoking. Then I have a lot of pictures of him smoking. Yeah. But he definitely had enjoyed his cigarettes. Kent King.
Yeah, okay. I remember because he was the only person I ever met that smoked those, and that's how I remember that.
Yep, I see it. We got a lot of unfinished projects we're going to get working on. So let's see, what else do we got here? Oh, I don't know if I like this, John.
Race in peace. That's a great name, by the way, man. DragBoss. That's like, you won the YouTube name lottery with that one.
You know what? Well, you got to remember, you and I grew up in the days when there was no internet. So we got all our stuff from the rag. Whatever rag you were getting and reading and going and talking to your buddies about and showing pictures, bringing it to school. You know how it worked. Yep. So then the internet came along. I was going to school then, and that was about 95, somewhere around there, a little before then. And that's when I started getting into computers and started getting into the websites, the forums, where Mopar has a forum. Cleveland's, they all do. That's where I got into getting your name, and I came up with DragBoss because I always loved Cleveland's. I had a Boss 351 I raced, so it kind of fit. Uncle Tony, where'd that come from?
On a whim, bro. It was just a whim. Wait, I'll tell you exactly where it came from. Right? I robbed Uncle Rob.
You what?
I'm going to tell a story in a minute, but I want to know about. We got Rusty over here. I want to know, Rusty, are you doing anything with YouTube? Because you've got so much heritage and so much history. I hope you've got a YouTube channel and you're feeding this thing. And if you are, I want to promote any way that I can.
Well, let me tell you this. So him and I hooked up a long time ago, probably quite a few months ago, and started talking back and forth. And I had this channel going, and long story short, we've been doing interviews for the past, we've done 4 so far, where he talked about nitrous and pro stock and how he did it and why he did it. I mean, this whole train's coming around, and you're on board too, so we're making it, we're bringing it in.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we can count on you. Maybe you can talk with him too,
I'd love to.
I'll set it all up. We'll get it all taken care of.
Yeah, give him my phone number.
I will.
Yeah. I gotta tell, because so this is for any aspiring YouTubers out there. Okay. I gotta tell the story of how I ended up Uncle Rob. Okay, or Uncle Tony.
Tony, yeah.
All right. we decided we wanted to try and do this sort of thing, right? And I am so camera shy and so uncomfortable in front of the camera, and I have ADD bordering on autism, right? I mean, like really super bad ADD. So you couple all of those things up, and I could not get a sentence out. So I had remembered a channel that I watched. I had coffee houses for a while. I'm a workaholic. I got to work 7 nights a week, right? So I had a night business. I had a series of coffee houses in New York City and here in Tennessee. So at night, I would sit around with the locals and we'd watch a bunch of YouTube videos. And back then it was like Tourette's guy, and it was a guy named Uncle Rob, who used to blow shit up with gasoline, right? But I remembered that Uncle Rob would do everything in like a sentence. He would say a sentence, and there would be a cut. And he'd say another sentence, there'd be another cut, right? So I says, wait, I can do that, right? I'm just going to do what Uncle Rob does. I'll spit out a sentence, and we'll cut, and I'll spit out another sentence, and I'll cut. So that's what I did, and in honor of that, I called myself Uncle Tony. So I stole Uncle Rob's identity.
There it is, guys, on DragBoss Garage Live, the story of Uncle Tony's name. I like it. It's funny how things have come about. You know, I never thought, and one of the things I wrote in the description of this video is, how the hell did I get a hold of and get in touch with Uncle Tony, and that our paths would intersect, and where are they going to go now? You know,
wherever you want, man. I'm game for everything.
Hey, then you'll be along for the ride. We'll be taking this train to the wind stripe. You know,
I think we got a really good collective. I think we got John Wilburn, the Andy, you know, Unity Motorsports, and he's tight with David Vizard.
Sure.
I think that we have a really good collective here. There's so much different perspective and so many decades of experience, you know. So like I said, and like you've got Rusty in this circle. I think that we have a really good. So you look at like let's call it the Motor Trend Mafia, okay? You know. You've got that collective out there on the West Coast. And I think that we have the nucleus of something that can not only exceed them, but crush them, you know, with what we've got here. This is real, you know, none of us are actors, none of us are performers, none of us are, you know what I mean? We're all gearheads, just making video and you know, being ourselves and doing what we can. And we collectively have a ton of experience and a ton of different variety of machinery. I got my piece of shit Mopars. You get this beautiful Ford. John's got all kinds of crazy things. I mean, you know, like, you see what I'm saying? It's like there's such the variety, and we all kind of like meet on that level of just like, you know, we just love this stuff. You know, when I'm in it for the money, when I'm in it for the glory, I never wanted to be famous. I could care less about being famous. I just want to play with cars. Right? And I think you feel the same way, and I think everybody else does in this circle. So I think we have the nucleus of something really special that we need to just keep, you know, nurturing and going. And that's one of the reasons why I moved into the shop and was setting up studio spaces so that we could do more stuff like this and get a little more diverse and a little more involved with each other.
I don't think I'll ever be famous like you, but, you know, people here, when they look up DragBoss on the internet, there's a lot there, I can tell you.
Don't sell yourself short, man. I got lucky. You just keep moving forward, you know. And anybody here who seriously wants to do YouTube, you know, this is the golden age of it. Get involved, right? Just start making content. Just keep putting it out there. You never know what's going to click.
That's exactly why I did it. I said, now's the time to do it. The time's right with COVID. I got a lot of stuff I've been collecting for 40 years, and now it's time to put it to use and get rid of it as my time goes on. And I hate to talk like that because it's not about being negativity. It's about being a realist, because you can only do this stuff for so long, and I want to get that out there. So it is. We have a great little nest of people with lots of contacts. I got a whole bunch of contacts on my side, as you do. So I can't wait to start putting this out on a regular basis.
Yeah, you know? we got a great collective, you know. And we'll just see where it goes, you know. Like I said, I'm game for pretty much anything. You know, this is my full-time gig. YouTube is what I do. So it's like, you know, say the word, and you know, let's do it. You know?
Yeah, we got it. I got it. I got a lot of good plans. So it's exciting. We know we're cutting edge, and that's the important thing, that we realize it and can take advantage of it and direct it where the most important and efficient thing goes. So yeah, I'm in. You know, I learned a lot from you.
Let's take a couple more questions from our guys here.
Sure, let's see.
As far as I know, my channel is the only place to see a 318 make a road trip delivery to. That's it, man. You are the 318 delivery champion. There's no question about it.
Let's see. Here we go. I'm just going down the list.
Okay. If you guys come to Vegas, come to Shelby American, ask for Shelby, or Flash, Shelby nickname. Give any of you guys a good tour, a nice chop. I had lunch with Carol Shelby, and he gave me the very first box of Carol Shelby. This is when I was working for Cars Illustrated. I don't know, one of the magazines I was doing back in the late 80s. Street Supercar might have been. And they were introducing the Shelby CSX. And we went out there for the preview of that. And we had lunch with Carol. And he gave me, he had just gotten the box delivered to him with the chili, the Carol Shelby chili.
Yeah, I remember that. I've had it.
Yeah, it was the very first box of the stuff that was going to go out and distribute. So when he came to meet us, he was carrying the box, and he tossed each of us a box of chili. And so I had a box from the first batch delivered, actually hand delivered by Carol, hand tossed to me by Carol Shelby.
Nice.
You remember me from the early. Listen, so I'm still camera shy, so don't let this shit fool you, right?
I don't know if I'm camera shy. I can't tell. You know, I get on there and the stuff just comes out. I don't have to. I might make some notes, but same with you. Doesn't it just come out? You just know what to say. It just comes out.
I try not to think. I find that if I think about it, I end up I screw things up. So I just, if it's and it gets me in a lot of trouble, honestly, right? Because I haven't thought like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. Now I got to go ahead and do it. So, but yeah, I've learned, don't think, just spit it out, and whatever it is, it's going to be.
Here's one for you. We kind of touched.
We're going, okay, so the lifters themselves are junk. We tried to run the car last Saturday because we got rained out the weekend before. I figured, well, let me take advantage of every opportunity. I bought a set of rockers, but they didn't get to us until literally we had the car on the trailer and heading to the track. So there was no time to put the adjustable rockers on. But the idea here is going to be to try the hydraulics, but bottom them out. So actually to turn them into solids. I have a right length push rod to do that with. So that's the next time we go out. That's what we're going to try. But it looks like we got the drivetrain issues with the car solved. You know, it's not breaking anything in the drivetrain anymore. It hooks like a bastard. I mean, this car just bites. But unfortunately, on 7 cylinders, it doesn't have much follow through. So we went last Saturday, made one run. It was pointless. It just wasn't making any powers on 7 cylinders. So we put it on a trailer and came home. Now the thing is, we got the Slanted Nationals. It's an AHRA event. It's in Sykeston, Missouri on September 5th, and we got to run Plan Z there. So right now, I got to just get away from Bottle Rocket for a couple of weeks and focus on Plan Z and get that thing turned to the track. The only thing I've done with that car, I broke in the cam, and then I made one quick squirt with it out on the street here, and I said I haven't touched it since. So I gotta dig into that car so it actually has a chance of getting from point A to B. And what it's going to run, I have not a clue. You know, just I'll be happy to get from A to B with it.
There you go.
Can't get to see Bottle Rocket on 2 wheels again. It did it last night or Saturday night. You can feel when the tires leave the pavement, but there was zero follow through because it leaves on the inertia. It's a stick. So it's leaving on the flywheel, you know what I mean? So it's got that move, right? It's got the bite, it's got the transfer. It'll hike the front wheels, but on 7 cylinders, there's no follow through. So I think it was like a 190, 160 foot. Pull both wheels, and it had like a 190, 160 foot. So it's like it was pointless. Just go home.
What's that got? An 833 in it?
It's got an 833 overdrive.
Okay. Oh wow.
Yeah, it's like you know the ultimate like throw this transmission away. That's what's in the car.
I'll tell you. Like now, let's see. That's what is that? 73?
72.
72. So that's torsion front end, right?
Yes.
Torsion bar.
Yes.
So like, how do you loosen? I mean, for that thing to launch, I mean, the main thing that you want to get is that transfer, that weight transfer.
Yes.
How do you loosen up torsion bars? How do you, like on a control arm, you can loosen up the bolts or the nuts that hold the control arm in. How do you loosen up a torsion bar?
Okay. The shock absorbers are the only resistance in that whole system.
Okay.
You drill out the shocks. You run it with dead shocks. It's not like a coil spring car.
Yeah.
With a coil spring car, if you pull a shock, you need to run like a 90-10 in the coil spring car.
Right.
Or the thing, you'll leave and the car will come down and it'll unload itself. It'll do all kinds of stupid things and go down the track like this. With a torsion bar car doesn't have that reaction. You'll have an up and you'll have a down, and there's nothing in between. So the key to doing a car like that is you remove the upper bump stops, so the car, the front end can rise as far as it has to before it tries to take the weight of the control arms and the wheels off the ground, and you drill out the shocks. You go out there with dead shocks, and the car just automatically wants to go. So it's got an 8.5-inch slick. I mean, they just work perfect. I wouldn't have thought there would be enough. Oh, the drag radial. I wouldn't have thought that they'd be enough, but damn it, they're enough. They bite, and that car goes, right? The problem, like I said, we're having right now is just to follow through. So the first couple of times we ran the car, I had a vacuum secondary carburetor on it, which I knew was not the way to go. I had a 750 Holly on it. It's what we had on hand. I threw it on there. Car had bad bogging. Next time out, we put an 850 mechanical secondary carburetor on it, and that fixed the bog, and that's where the car really started to like move. But it ran through the clutch. So the car ran like an 886. It left, it unwound the suspension, and then the clutch started to slip. I power shifted second, it slipped even harder. I power shifted third, and as I power shifted third, it just ran away. So I lifted about 20 feet before the strike, and the car went like an 886. So I was like, okay, this is good. You know, we're on the right. I put a clutch on the car and blew up the rear end, broke an axle, spit the whole thing out. So we switched from 8 1/4 to an 8 3/4, and that's where we're at now with the car.
What do they have for splines for axles for that? Comparing, like Ford has a 31 spline. What does Mopar have?
I don't know if they're 30 or 31. They're 31.
Okay.
31 spline.
I ran a 31 spline axle. I think I was running no issues with it. 1040s, 1050s. So
well, the 8 3/4 is more than up to the task.
Oh yeah.
The 8 1/4, I was pushing it with the 8 1/4. Yeah, and I knew it going in, but it was like, you know what? It's in the car. I threw a 410 gear in it. I welded up the spiders. I says, you know what? Let's just see how far we'll go with it. And it didn't go very far. As soon as I got the car to hook, that going from the vacuum secondary, the mechanical secondary, and then tightening up on the clutch was all it took. One pass, just bam, and it spit an axle out.
I know we had talked about Caltrax, and you said, no, I'm not using them. I want to stick with what I got.
What I have is a completely stock rear suspension.
What is that, 5 leafs or something? It's a stock.
It's not literally, it's the suspension the car came off the assembly line with.
Okay.
You know, I cleaned the leaf springs and then painted them black. That's it. I unclipped the back of the springs because, you know, Mopars use an asymmetrical spring.
Sure.
So the front segments will act as a traction bar.
Right.
You have to let the rear segments fan out. So that's the only modification to the car, like I said, to the rear suspension is I've got a 3-way adjustable drag shock on the left side, which I haven't even begun to tune. I haven't touched it. I stuck it in there. I couldn't even tell you what position it's in because what's the point if you don't have a tune-up on it?
Right.
So I just stuck it in there for future, you know, tuning, and I've got an air shock on the right side to preload the right. There's a pinion snubber on it, but the pinion snubber is set so low that it doesn't even contact the floor. And I got the pinion angle. I went overboard on pinion angle. I got about 7 degrees of pinion angle on it. but it's fine. It seems to be working out just perfect.
What's up, Teddy's Gun Shop?
I mean, Teddy.
Let's see, here we are.
And the thing about that car is it's dripping wet. It weighs 3,045 pounds.
What?
Mm-hmm.
3,000?
3,045 pounds.
I'll tell you, look at that car and go, oh, that's a 3,500-pound car right off the bat.
No, 3,045 pounds.
Wow.
Sneaky Pete was with me the whole time.
No kidding.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, and it has a full interior, has steel wheels, heavy steel wheels all the way around.
Yeah.
Full interior. The windows are all glass. They all roll up and down. It's got the factory bench seat in it. It's got it's a stock 72 car in it, and it weighs 3,045 pounds.
Wow.
With gas and oil on the starting line, minus me, that's what it weighs.
I can remember way back in the day, it was a 73 Monaco. It was an old state trooper car in New York. And they had like a 440, I think they had a 444 barrel in them. Man, those cars, they were big boats, but man, that thing kicked in. I don't know if it was a thermoquad or what, man. But
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Great highway jets, man. Those are, like from 40 to 75. There's,
Yeah. Is that what they were? Thermoquads?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 800 CFM thermoquads.
Let's see. I think he's talking about your the Mopar.
Yeah. There's a lot of stealth weight removal in that car. He's right. When it's sitting there idling, every panel on the car is just shaking and vibrating. If you go to you tap on the back bumper and the back bumper goes boing.
Nice. Don and Wendy English. People need to hit the thumbs up button. Should have over 100 by now. I put these on replay so guys can come back and watch this because I've gotten a lot of requests. Listen, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm not going to be able to make it. Can you put it on so I can see it? So I put it on replay for others. Come back and check it out.
We usually leave them. We usually leave the Sunday night shows up for a day because it's not really. We try to avoid the tech on Sundays and try to make it more just like a communal thing with our regular viewers. So it's like I don't really want to leave that up. The Wednesday night ones we leave up. Those are the tech. They're supposed to be the tech ones where we do mostly. So we leave that up because there might be some good information that somebody can pick up out of it.
Yeah, thanks, John. Ohio. Tony's in Nashville, Tennessee, correct?
I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I'm 25 miles south of Nashville.
Okay, there you go. Thank you for correcting me. Here's a guy that Rusty Glidden likes his name.
Elder Fudge Packer.
Let's see what he said.
Did any factory Mopar drag cars use a push button training? Yeah, or anything built in '64. Any like your automatic max wedge cars, Hemi cars. You know the 864 Hemi cars. They all use the automatics. All use the push button. '65 they had the same transmission, but at that point the government said you can't have any more push button. Like transmission selectors. It's got to be a standard, lever or console mount. So they still use a cable shift transmission in '65, so it'd be like the A990 cars, but they had they had it on the column. But any Mopar automatic from 1964 back would have what they call a typewriter torque flight.
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you. Well, you mentioned something about, and I've never seen this. Maybe you had the experience. Someone, saying, swearing on here or saying stuff where you can put them in timeout. But, I'm so fascinated by talking to you, I can't keep up with the comments and listen to you. So I kind of let some of that pass probably.
Well, I've been hogging the show, and I'm sorry about that. I just sometimes I get into like a you know what I mean? And this is one of those nights. I'm sorry to our viewers who have.
I think they like it. Just let us go back and listen and get used to this to see what we got, because we have a lot of shows that we can put together. a lot of experience for everybody. So I think they're just like rolling with it. Let's see what the guy said.
Dan's garage is. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, Ralph.
No, sir. Putting together, I'm 70, putting together 500 horsepower 302 for. That's good. Good deal, man. The secret: cylinder heads and cam.
Everything is
Make sure you pick up the right thing for that. You'll be good to go.
Mm-hmm.
Let me roll down here and see what we got.
You know, I want to say something about that.
Yep. Go back on which one now?
About the solar heads and cam, right?
Oh yeah. Yep. Yep.
Consulting with a cam grinder, right, is so important. People. I mean, okay. I mean, I'm doing this shit since the 70s. Okay, I can spec my own cams. I don't. I'll talk with a grinder, right? I'll tell my specific because each cam manufacturer has different profiles, different things, right? Little tricks that they could dial into a grind for you, right? So if you're contemplating any type of build, any type of performance build like that, do yourself a favor and don't try to guess at what cam you need. Don't just pick something out of the catalog. Literally, call a grinder, right? Get on the tech line. Give them every little bit of information. Everything, like literally, right? Weight, tire size, gearing, right? I mean, just transmission, everything right on line. Make sure to know every last spec on that car. You know, that's the right way to do it. I mean, you'll find that if you just buy off-the-shelf stuff and stick it all together, you're going to get the same results. You're going to get your results are going to match the effort that you put into it. So if your effort is to just pick up the Summit catalog or Jags or whatever it is and order this cam and this cylinder head and bolt it all together, well, that's what you're going to get out of it. Okay, but you consult, with your cam grinder, and that's where the magic will really happen, right? Does that make any sense? Am I saying the right thing?
You are. In fact, to put on top of that, here's what I look at. And I'm maybe a little bit more technical, but I look at what the heads are flowing. I want to know what these heads are flowing at 5 and 600 inch lift. I mean, that's where you're going to have that cams working. And that if you're in a street car, you're not going to be doing 800 lift in a street car for the most part. So you want to put that cam in that perspective of where your RPM range is going to be. Your cam is not going to run at 270 and 280 inch at 050. It's not going to run on the street. You need to be in the 225 range or 230. You got to put that cam, like Uncle Tony's saying, into what your heads are flowing. If you really want to do it right, you get the heads flowed and you have to talk to the cam grinder of your choice and you have them matched to that aspect. Get your goal set up first.
Yeah. Every head has different characteristics.
Indeed.
Every intake type of manifold has different characteristics. Every type of exhaust has different characteristics. And so that's why you need to specifically match all of these things together to create a harmonious flow from the air horn to the exhaust tip. It all fits together. It all works together, And the camshaft is the key to the kingdom. You know what I mean? But I mean, it's like, it's just, small differences in lobe separation angle make all the difference in the world, whether an engine is going to actually work and pull and grunt, where it's supposed to. You really, to get the most out of this stuff, you really need to sit down and science and think, and don't impulse buy. You've got to just, does that make any sense? And then you can make ridiculous power out of stupid nothing combinations. You know what I mean? Where compression really, people get so obsessed with compression. You know what I mean? Or even like port CFM. That's not the whole story. Just because you're going to flow X amount to the port does not mean it's going to frickin' work. You can have an exhaust port that flows 10,000 CFM, but if it's a dead hook downward and you've got a log jam of exhaust gas, well, you know what? You see what I'm saying? It's like you can't always go by flow numbers. You can't always. Every situation is going to be completely different, and that's how you can take you see the stock eliminator guys, and they'll have a 273 with a frickin' 210 CFM Stromberg 2-barrel on it, and they're making 380 horsepower with these things and sending a 4,000-pound station wagon down track in the high 12s. That's how it's done. It's all science. All science.
And it's not, like you said, it's not just about the flow number. It's about the port shape. It's about how big is that port, not about the CFM is not, you don't port head for CFM, you port it for flow. The CFM will make its own. That's what Darren Morgan taught me or told me. So you look at that. You want to port the flow well, it needs to have the right velocity. If that flow is not going at the right velocity, those air molecules are not stuck together. They're banging against the wall. Fuel's falling out of separation. You're going to have fallout. It's just going to be a poor working cylinder cylinder head.
Well, and a lot of people, they're obsessed with the obvious numbers, you know?
Yeah.
Duration, advertised duration of 50, right? And lift. And they leave it at that. But those numbers are all completely like irrelevant unless you consider load separation angle and timing, right? You know, overall timing events. So it's like there's just so much to it. And the guys who don't do this, well, you're missing the whole point of building cars. Man, it's not just about ordering shit from a catalog and sticking a camera in the engine because it sounds good. You know what I mean? It's not about reading what we're watching a video and seeing what we do, or reading a car magazine and seeing what they do. No, man, it's about actually taking control of re-engineering your entire package and making it yours and making it do the things that you want to do. You know, that's where the fun is. You know, people who don't do this stuff, well, they're missing the fun part. It's not just about bolting parts together.
Exactly. I'll tell you, the last few motors I've built, I bought a program called Drag 2000. You remember it?
Yep.
It's a floppy disk, and Dyno 2000.
I never used it, but I'm familiar with it.
I've used them, and I'm telling you, they are, if you put all the right information in, I mean, I would be close to being within a tenth of my quarter-mile time, and within 10 to 15 horsepower on the dyno. You know, it's all about the putting it together to the right combination. And thinking about it.
It all fits together. It all fits together.
It's a puzzle.
When I know, like, okay, like you talk about like going off into the really obscure. I worked, one of the first fuel cars I worked on as a helper and then later as a mechanic with Jerry Camino, the Blue Thunder car, right?
Yep.
He actually, okay, so just talk about him for a second, okay? This was right at that period we were going from the single mag to the dual mag, and that was the car that actually Ray Alley had that race pack on. He had been running, he was running in the thick of things, and I don't remember what the numbers were, but he finished number 10 in the world, okay? Finished number 10 in the world. He had gone 50 runs without taking the heads off the car.
Wow.
50 runs, finished number 10 in the world, went 50 runs without taking the head off the car, okay? This is, right, science. Now, Jerry would go around the car. After a run, he'd go around the car, and he would check certain bolts on the frame. And he would tune based on the tightness of the bolts, because when the car was working correctly, it had a certain harmonic setup. And then when it was wrong, it had a different harmonic setup. And if I remember correctly, it was the bolts at the left front upper control arm would loosen if the tune-up was off because of the harmonic that went through the framework. So that's how, see, that's drag racing. That's the science of drag racing. That's a man who is completely and utterly in tune with his car. And it doesn't matter if it's a fucking 6-cylinder Valiant or a AA fuel funny car. It doesn't make any difference, man. It's all the same. It's all exactly the same. And it's all about becoming that in tune with your machine that you know what each little thing is. You know, does that make any sense?
Yeah, believe me, it does.
That's where the fun is. That's where the fun is.
I had a Mallory distributor that was worn out, and on a run, it would backfire on a run until I figured the rotor was loose. So I took a paper shim and stuck it underneath there. I'd pound it back on there, and every so often the paper would wear out. I'd have to put new paper in there. That way I didn't have to buy a distributor. You know, it worked fine as long as I remembered to put it down and make sure the rotor was down when I would go for a run. So it wouldn't
you know, that's the other thing too. You'll know if you buy used race part. Let's say you buy a used race engine, okay?
Yeah.
Nothing is nothing is going to be factory. You'll have, right, like you've got 16 push rods in an engine, 13 of them going to be different lengths. Right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Because you know, the guy who's really on it, the guy who's really making the power, and the guy who's being successful with it, okay, has scienced everything out and watched every bit of motion. And you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, so you and I, right? We're gonna build an engine. We're gonna stick it on a streetcar or a bracket car or whatever it happens to be, right? And so we'll put the cam in, and we'll time the cam. You know what I mean? And we'll run it through, you know, and make sure that there's no coil bind, and you make sure that everything's gonna work. Okay. No, when you build on a race engine, you're rotating that engine how many times, watching each individual push rod, rocker, valve assembly interact with each other. And if you all know this rocker is hitting the stem just a little bit off here, and you'll take the whole damn thing apart and you'll find another rocker that's just machined 3/4 thousandths of an inch difference, but that makes the difference. And now the geometry is correct on that rocker, and you move on to the next. And I mean, when you're doing this stuff right, you could spend literally a week setting up the rocker arms or the valve train on an engine to get it right.
Wow. It just blows me away when you hear that kind of stuff.
But when you talk about like okay, so Rusty Glidden was here, right?
Yeah.
What I'm talking about right now is something that Rusty is very familiar with. I will guarantee it, because that is how his old man built engines, and he probably built them that way himself.
We'll get him. We'll have all three of us on here. We'll have a great discussion. Let's see. Here's. I'm telling you, I used that program and it worked. I still have it. So interesting. Here's another one. Now, it goes back to this, which I don't know what the LA motor is. And I think that's a small block. Am I right?
What Rusty is saying, yes, he's correct in that. Yeah, that's how a race engine is built. That's the difference between a race engine and a street engine. You know, a real race engine, you can't sell it to anybody, right?
Right.
Okay, so you take the motor that's a bottle rocket arm, right? $12 motor that's a bottle rocket. The bottom line is, if I took that engine apart in all pieces, okay, just broke it all down, and I handed it to you, you're going to be able to put it back together again. Because each push rod, you know, and it's so funny because we were like, did you do this? Did you do that? Bro, each individual piece of that engine has been completely scienced, and that's why it makes the power it does when it's not hurting itself.
Yeah.
You know, because again, it is junk parts, but it'll make a legit 400 horsepower normally aspirated. That's out of an 8.5 to 1 compression, small valve. It's got stock valves, you know, but it's an honest 400 horsepower motor without spraying.
I think they were talking about this too. I don't know much about the LA 318.
Okay. Spent 2 days trying to start an LA 318 after a cam change. Had the wrong wrong bank. The number one is always the cylinder closest to the radiator, right? Just think of it that way, right? Just look at the engine. One bank is always going to be a little bit closer to the radiator than the other one. That's always number one.
Let's see. Here's one. We were talking about it just now, so I'll put it back up here.
Okay.
So Rusty says, yes, he's correct on that.
Yeah. That is race building. That's the difference between, you know, bolting stuff together and getting, you know, moderate results of just, you know, or actually building order. And Rusty will tell you, you know, if he built, if when you tear down one of those motors, you know, you don't just take the push rods and throw them, you know, so in other words, like, you know, okay, so like I got to rebuild one of the 4.0s in one of my Jeeps, okay? So when I tear that thing apart, man, it's all, okay, here, the rockers get thrown in this bucket, they get thrown in, the push rods will get, you know, thrown in there, you know, and it's just, you just batch clean everything. But when you do a race motor, every push rod has to go back in the hole that it came from. Every rocker's got to go back to the cylinder it came from, you know? It's all exactly, you know, right.
That's why they made Ziploc bags. Let's see, what else do we have? Well, we got to kind of think about now, because it's 10:30 at night. So we've been on for about 2.5 hours, which I told my wife, I said, after about 2.5 hours, we're going to call it quits. And there's so much information here. People just, it's like you can't stop. You know what I mean? It's like you want to answer the next question for someone. And
well, we'll pull the plug whenever you're ready. I mean,
here's what we'll do. We'll wind it down now. That way people can answer if there's one or more question. We'll wind it down now. And then what I'll do is I'll hook up with you and we'll hook you up with Rusty's phone number. We'll get things straightened around, and we'll have another live cast with not just me and you, but it could be fun with Andy and even David Vizard. You know, something that we really could do.
With StreamYard, you can have like I think how many?
10 people, 10? I think. Yeah.
That might be a little too clusterfucky.
Oh yeah, of course.
But I think if we set up one with, let's say, 5 or 6, and you know what? I tell you what, I'm going to leave that to you because my head is filled with so many things.
Nope, I understand.
I don't have the capacity to do that. But if you want to set it up, man, I would love to participate. I'd love to meet Rusty. I'd love to get on there with David Vizard again.
Sure.
So I'll leave it to you, man. You know, and we'll just whenever you're ready. Andy,
all right.
You want to get Andy in there, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, it'll be nice. I'll see what we can arrange in the next couple of weeks. So, like John Wilburn just said here, says we need a big round table. So that'll be pretty darn good.
I'm sitting in front of a big round table, John.
Oh yeah, here's this one.
You drinking my coffee now? Totally worth for another letter. I used to roast my own coffee. When I walked away from drag racing in 1998, I think it was. I don't even remember what year it was. I don't remember. I had so many things, right? Like I didn't know there was a world. You know what I mean? It was like a newborn kid. Like, you know. So I studied all sorts of things. I mean, I got deep into psychology and I mean just all sorts of stuff, right? And then I opened a coffee house in New York because what are you gonna do? I got to do something. So you know, like to keep the. So I opened a coffee house so I could argue with people, and that's what I did. I argued with people 7 nights a week. It was a blast. It was great. But I don't know where I was going. Oh, but anyway, I learned how to roast coffee. So I used to buy, you know, green bean, and I built my own roaster out of a bread maker, and I used a heat gun, and I used to roast my own coffee, and I came up with all different blends and stuff like that, and it was pretty good stuff.
I'll tell you Bob Glidden's secret to coffee, and Rusty said this on our last show, but all the racers used to love to come to Glidden's trailer to get coffee in the morning, because what he did is he made up whatever grounds he used. He said he poured salt over the top of it.
Yeah.
A small little bit of salt was the secret ingredient. I got to try that tonight. So
you gonna drink coffee now?
No. Tomorrow. I got to try it for tomorrow morning. But yeah, 10:30 at night. DragBoss is drinking coffee. I'll never get to bed.
All right. So you want to pack it in?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's call it quits. I'll push the button to end it, and then we can talk for a minute afterwards and get our plan going.
Okay.
So I appreciate all you guys tuning in to DragBoss Live with Uncle Tony's Garage, the famous Uncle Tony.
Yeah, guys, everybody who joined us tonight, it was great having you here. I see a lot of faces from our usual lives. I had a great time tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Uncle Tony, and I wish I could get more questions on there from your guys. We'll get that figured out.
That's all right.
But appreciate it. All right, guys, we'll see you.
Good night, all.
Good night.